I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind all members of your responsibility to do so, and you can do so now or when it arises on the agenda. None declared. Then this evening we have 5 deputations, and the first one is Mr. Scott Roberts, and he's here about an encroachment for stairs on municipal property adjacent to 53 Fenton Drive. Mr. Roberts, just come to the mic and...
Good evening. On behalf of myself and my wife Janet, we'd like to thank you for allowing us to address you this evening. Unfortunately, Janet cannot be here tonight as she had a procedure this morning at the hospital. I am here tonight to obtain an encroachment permit for a set of stairs from our property at 53 Fenton Drive down to the North Shore Road. On the property we bought 3 years ago, known as 51 Fenton Drive, there are steps down to the North Shore Road. Between then and now, we have severed the property, creating a new lot known as 53 Fenton Drive, and would like to have access from 53 Fenton to the North Shore Road. In May of last year, we started the process of cleaning up our property in anticipation of finishing the yard of our new home. The slope down to the North Shore had been neglected for years and was extremely overgrown and very dangerous. There was a tremendous amount of garbage, used tires, miscellaneous debris, as well as a retaining wall that was in extremely dangerous condition. The rebar that had been used over the years to retain the bricks of the retaining wall were protruding from the ground, and there was concern should anyone fall down the hill, the possibility of serious harm coming to someone was very high. The shrubs, trees, and plantings were overgrown and simply rotting away. It was brought to our attention after the cleanup that we were not allowed to do this and that the slope must be replanted. It was our intention all along to replant the slope as a part of the landscaping of the entire project. We agreed with the town's request to have a landscape architect, Hackstone Landscaping, to prepare said plan at our cost. This was submitted to town staff and approved by them in August. We at that point contracted further with Hackstone Landscaping to develop a landscaping plan for the entire property that was based around the slope plan that had already been approved. This took several months and cost several thousands of dollars. We received a phone call 4 months after the approval of the slope plan when staff questioned the stairs that were on the approved plan, asking if they were the stairs that currently existed. They were advised that no, the existing stairs were on 51 Fenton, not 53. It was at this point we were advised that the approval of the plan with the stairs was being rescinded. We were advised that an encroachment permit would have to be obtained and given the process to go through in order to obtain the permit. I would like to point out that all properties along the North Shore Road have access to and from the road from their property in one way or another, and we are simply asking for the same opportunity everyone has to this access. We understand the cost of the permits, the cost of the replanting of the slope is our responsibility, and do so without reservation. The stairs were approved in August by staff, and we are willing to comply with the necessary formalities of the maintenance, the encroachment agreement, etc., in order that we can move forward with the entire landscaping project at our home. I therefore am asking for approval of the encroachment permit for the stairs.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Questions for Mr. Roberts? Comments? Councillor Huber, or Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been commented upon that we don't comment on deputations, and certainly I'm not too sure where we go with this, but I've been disappointed with the lack of attention to public property in the past, and certainly anybody who purchases land should be aware of where the lot line starts and stops, and that beyond the lot line is not their property. So having said that, I also in looking at photographs of this particular property over the years, the removal of vegetation didn't just start in 2014. It started before that. And so I'm kind of in a bit of a quandary. And for what it's worth, the fact that the lot's been severed into two parcels, the other parcel of land, yeah, there might be some stairs there, but at the point where there's a building permit requested for that property, the town will then attempt to have encroachments on public land removed prior to the issuing of a building permit. So chances are when something happens on the abutting lot, the stairs that are there right now, there will be a request to remove them if, that's followed through the way that things have happened in the past. I have a little bit of difficulty with this at the moment because, of course, there's lots of snow down there, so it's hard to tell just who does and doesn't have stairs or driveways because, of course, some properties aren't occupied in the winter. But certainly, I guess we're being asked for a decision. I would look to you, Mr. Mayor, for some advice on what to do, but I certainly do believe that we have to do something that suggests, prior to trees and vegetation being removed, that there be an awareness of what is and isn't private property, what is public property. And I'm not saying that, certainly in advance, a request to the town, maybe there was a little bit of a cleanup in there on public property that could have happened. But the thing is to go in and just remove all the vegetation and then, expect, I didn't know. It's been enough years that we've been talking about this that there should be a pretty good awareness out there that public property is public property and you shouldn't be cutting trees down on it without asking in advance. And then the town would, if warranted, go in there and do it. It's not certainly what should be happening. And once a tree's down, a tree's down. And, so I just am looking to you, Mr. Mayor, for some advice on how we proceed.
Thank you. If there's any comments, I'd suggest, we can have other comments, but I think we've heard Mr. Roberts, and I know that he's been talking to our staff, and I think it would be appropriate that we give staff an opportunity to come back with some type of their comments to this, and I don't expect them to do that tonight. But I do sympathize with your comments about removing or encroachments on public property. That's been a policy here for a long time, that where we get the opportunity through zoning or some type of relief that we try and have those removed. And the other thing about cutting trees on public property, I think there's, in my mind, quite simply, there's no excuse for that. You will often know the three property lines. You wouldn't do that to your neighbor to the north or your south. I have no idea why you would do it to the town. So in any case, that would be my comments. And go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for your deputation. I just have a couple of quick questions. So were you aware that it was public property when the trees were removed?
Yes, we were aware it was public property, but we just figured we could clean it up. It had been neglected for so long.
Did you ever at any time talk to anyone at the town?
About cleaning it up?
Yep.
No.
Did you ask if they would come in and clean it up?
No.
Could your stairs have been built with the trees in place where they were?
There was too much shrubbery.
Yeah, so it would have been impossible to build the
But everything
stairwell.
was dead anyways. It was dying. It was rotted. The bugs were incredible that
Right.
came out of there.
No, I understand that.
And the danger of the rebar. If something had to be done and you had to get rid of the vegetation to be able to get at the brick. It was a 3-tier retaining wall. Bricks, and the rebar was put in and the bricks fell away.
Sure, no, I understand that completely. So it's my understanding that it seems like a mistake was made when they looked at that. They might not have noticed that there were a stairwell in the initial plan, and then they just rescinded that when they noticed that the stairwell did exist. Would you say that that's exactly the way you read it too?
Yeah, they made an error. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so it was a mistake that was made. My third or final question would be, would you be in favor of having a right-of-way to the stairs in the adjacent property?
I don't want to, it's up for sale.
I understand that.
I don't want to encumber somebody that would buy that property that will allow us to go across it. I don't know that I would buy a piece of property.
That had a right-of-way
Yeah.
to stairwell
Right.
on it.
And we're not asking for anything.
How many feet over is the stairwell that exists on the adjacent property?
Oh, from the new property line, 20 feet.
20 feet. So a 20-foot encroachment or a 20-foot right-of-way would be something that would prevent you from buying a property under most circumstances?
Well, would it?
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I'm
it
asking
would
this
for me, absolutely, because you
Okay.
don't know what you're going to do with that property. And I know what has been planned for the total property, front to back, side to side. It would be hard for us to get over there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Councillor Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, it's a road, of course, we all travel lots, is North Shore Road, and I'm of the opinion, I'm kind of, I get discouraged when I see arbitrarily any resident knocking down trees, shrubs on Saugeen Shores property without approvals. And whether residents know or they don't know, and I think it's an education process that if people aren't aware that they're not to cut trees down along waterfront that's maybe blocking a view, then the residents need to know that. And I think from an education standpoint, if I may make a suggestion where this decision is going tonight, but I really think whether it's a tax notice, insertion, or whether it's a water bill, or the Town of Saugeen Shores website, maybe it's already there, but can we not maybe perhaps, if there are still people that don't understand they're not to cut trees, dead or not dead, shrubs large or small, that they're not to cut down on Town of Saugeen Shores property, could we maybe perhaps educate the public again in terms of an insertion into one of our tax notice or water bills at a future time, Mr. Mayor? Just so that maybe we can get that word out.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea. There's a bylaw, I believe, too, that
understand
that prohibits it with penalties, and that I think we should. It would be, by all means.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? So I think that's the way we'll leave it. We'll leave it with you, Stuart, and give us some ideas about what your concerns are and what's gone forward with this. And so thank you very much, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you.
The next deputation is Jerry Boucher, and he's here about the Saugeen Rail Trail, about an exciting anniversary that we're having. Welcome, Jerry.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to make this presentation. Mayor Smith is right. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary as the Saugeen Rail Trail Association this year, so we're hoping to get everybody on board to help us in our celebration. First of all, I would like to, on behalf of the Saugeen Rail Trail Association Board of Directors, to congratulate all of you members of council for your being elected to the council. And I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the board to thank you all for taking on this important and difficult community service. And we look forward as a board to working with you. The reason for our being here this evening is, as we said, to thank you for 25 years of trail building, and to ask for your ongoing support and encourage us in the development for the next 25 years. We have a brief video and information booklet which we have left with you to pursue at your own leisure, which highlights the 25-year history of the formation of Saugeen Rail Trail Association, which was formed in 1990 when we received our official registration from Revenue Canada as a registered charitable organization. At that time, we also signed a land lease agreement with the towns of Port Elgin, Southampton, and the township of Saugeen. Later, with the town of Saugeen Shores, of course. Although it is mentioned in the video booklet, I want to emphasize that this trail development has been an ongoing partnership with this council at all levels of town staff, and we thank you all for your support and encouragement over the 25 years. We look forward to your participation during our Silver Jubilee activities and planned events for the upcoming season. During our planned 2015 activities, our annual general meeting, our Canada Day celebrations, our memorial service at the Memorial Gardens, we want to take the opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of the past SRT board members and our sponsors, as well as the general membership who have been faithful to us over 25 years. We have a board of directors with 9 members. We have a general membership of over 150 families who pay yearly memberships. Several corporate sponsors, as well as the service clubs, which we call on when we need support. Our volunteers donated over 5,000 volunteer hours to the maintenance, enhancement of this totally accessible community trail in 2014. One of our 25th anniversary sponsorship programs we have planned is the placement and the planting of 25 large autumn blaze maple trees at various key locations along the trail, in addition to our annual ongoing tree planting program in partnership with Saugeen Corporation. As part of our ongoing preventive maintenance program, we are planning on resurfacing 2 sections of the trail, build a connecting trail to join into Perkins Park, and complete the last 2 sections of Memorial Gardens to accommodate additional memorial trees. So therefore, to the town staff, especially Jane Jagalowski and the Director of Community Services and her staff, and all of the sponsors and faithful members, I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to take a special opportunity to thank the media, who have been a real good support to us over 25 years. We look forward to your support and ongoing enthusiasm this year. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Is there questions or comments for Mr. Go ahead, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. This is a very energetic brochure. It's good. I know that we haven't approved the budget yet, but I know that there is a title in the budget that talks about urban trees. Is it possible to consider that the municipality can contribute 1 or 2 of these autumn blaze trails from that fund line? The project, I don't know how we can perhaps consider that, but there is something in the budget for trees, and they're going to plant some trees, and I know they'll take care of the trees, so maybe we can use a little bit of that money for this.
I think it's a great idea, Diane, and I'm sure I can,
1 for sure, possibly 2 would be
and I'm
better.
sure we can accommodate it. Other comments? Councillor Grace.
Yes, thanks, Jerry. I had a great meeting with Jerry and Joyce Scammell the other day, and I'm now on the Rail Trail Association group, I guess. And
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. Yes, and I was very pleased, and I just want to say that before I even joined this, I was very impressed, and I think we just have to treasure this wonderful environmental, recreational, and cultural project that these folks have worked so hard on for the past quarter century. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I couldn't have the people from Saugeen Rail Trail Association come without thanking you, Jerry, and Joyce Scammell and the entire board. You people have just done magnificent work over the last 25 years. And I know back when we implemented the 2004 Parks Trails Master Plan, it's been implemented successfully and very willingly with the Saugeen Rail Trail Association. We'll be partnering with that particular project. But the work you all have done dating back to 1990 and right up to 2015 is just miraculous. And I wanted to say thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Just echo what's been said. I know this is a volunteer group that was started as volunteers from the very beginning and has been so successful that it's kind of led to what we now have as a pretty unique and I guess great asset in our entire trail system. And it really was started some 25 years ago, Jerry, and I want to thank you and the group that started that. And by all means, I hope we can get some invitations to every event that you have this year, because we'd love to be out and support you. So thanks very much, Jerry.
Thank you very much. And if I could just make a comment about the tree cutting, that would certainly help the rail trail as well. If we get an announcement out there to people that they shouldn't be cutting trees along the trail without permission or.
Yep. I
Okay,
think that's
thank
a great
you.
idea, and we'll come up with some idea on that. Thanks very much, Jerry, and thanks for the other members of the rail trail that are here tonight. Our next deputation is Ken Cassavoy, and he's here about heritage designation for the General Hunter. Welcome, Mr. Cassavoy.
I'll make sure I stay on time. Mayor Smith, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for providing me with this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm here to ask for your support in my efforts to have the HMS General Hunter Shipwreck Site on Southampton Beach designated as a National Historic Site. Now, many of you will be aware of the General Hunter story, including the major role that the town of Saugeen Shores played in the successful completion of that project. However, time passes quickly, so for those of you who are less or not at all familiar with our shipwreck project, I'd like to begin by providing a short illustrated presentation as background for the proposal. The presentation I provided last week to the town would actually run a little longer than the time limit of 10 minutes, so I'll be moving quickly over some of the slides. However, if you like, I'll be happy to amplify on any of the points at some mutually convenient time. So let's have a look at some slides here. That's how it all began in April of 2001 when the ship frames came up through the sand. Members of the Southampton Marine Heritage Society contacted me, and as a marine archaeologist, I came over, looked at it, thought there was something substantial here, and applied for a license right away. So we began almost immediately with a series of excavations. 2001, we looked at those ship frame tips and then across it in a test trench, and we found there's a substantial part of a ship there right over to the other side. So we had a full-size ship there, at least in some portion. 2001, 2002, we did a major dig along the keelson of the ship. You can see there that we found a mainmast step and a foremast step. To this point, we knew it was an early vessel, but not what kind of a vessel. This identified it as a brig or a schooner, and it was clearly an early one. 2004, because we knew it was an important shipwreck at that point, we undertook a major excavation starting at the top of the beach and working our way down through the standard archaeological excavation units to the ship itself. We screened all of that sand, as you can see in the for archives, and within 6 weeks, it was a long 6 weeks, but within 6 weeks we were there. We had cleared it the entire interior of the hull, plus some of the exterior at the bow and stern, and we had removed all of the artifacts and sent them to the Canadian Conservation Institute in Ottawa. Since that time, they're back at the museum now. All have been returned at this point. It was a big deal on the beach, I have to say, for quite a while. A lot of people came down to see it. They were very interested in what we were doing. We brought them in every day when we were finished our work and showed them what we were about. And it was a great encouragement to have that sort of interest in our site. We closed the site after 6 weeks because we had to keep the wood wet. Back in its wet sand environment, and you can see within 3 days it was covered, and within a couple more days we had the beach back to its normal condition. At which point we had to begin the identification process, which would take much longer, of course. These slides I'm going to have to move through, as I said, very quickly, but you'll have to take my word for some of this. But we have lots of evidence. This is HMS General Hunter, there's no question. But I'll go through quickly some of them. From the hull, we knew it was an early ship right away and probably was built in a Royal Navy shipyard. The hull told us that right away. We had many artifacts there, lots of military ones. Most important were the military buttons, both British and U.S., and they were very important in going forward with the identification of the ship. They were from specific units in both the U.S. and British military. We had historical evidence. We compiled a list of all the British and U.S. military vessels on the Upper Lakes from a 10-year period, 1806 to 1816. Only one ship emerged from that research as a possible candidate for our wreck, and that was HMS General Hunter. So with that information, we learned what we could about the Hunter, built in 1806 by William Bell at Fort Malden. It had various provincial marine transport duties from 1806 to the war, sailed as part of the British Upper Lakes Squadron in the War of 1812, and there were lots of actions. I've just listed 3 here, but there were many actions the ship was involved in. The capture of the U.S. Cuyahoga off Fort Malden in July 2nd, 1812. That's just a couple of weeks after the war began. So it was an early victory for the Canadian British forces. Successful attack on the capture of Detroit. It took part in on August of 1812. The Battle of Lake Erie was a whole other story. September 10th, 1813. The capture of the Cuyahoga, there it is. These are all paintings by Peter Rindlisbacher. And there's General Hunter at the Battle of Lake Erie. All of the squadron were lost to Admiral Perry and his fleet, which you see taking the captured ships back into Put-in Bay. This is, This is a a bill of sale for the General Hunter. It was sold by the U.S. Navy to a private owner. He very soon sold it to the U.S. Army, and it became a U.S. Army transport called Hunter. So with that British or U.S. connection, we went looking in the National Archives in Washington and found this information from the commanding general in Detroit to the U.S. Secretary of War in Washington. We found a letter which stated the United States brig Hunter was cast away on the Canadian shore on August 19, 1816 in a violent gale. Along with it, a very lengthy declaration which covered the final voyage of the vessel over a 3-day period. It was a magnificent find for when you're doing research, but all kinds of detail in there, all of which we used to great effect in trying to identify the ship. There's the final voyage coming down from Fort Mackinac down the lake, pushed over by a violent gale to the other side of the lake and coming ashore at Southampton. In that declaration, there were all kinds of points made, and we compared those with our excavation. I'd love to read them to you because they're quite interesting. Well, they're interesting to me, but they do all stand out as, you know, this is what we saw in the declaration, this is what we found in the excavation, and they all match, without exception, very nicely with our ship. So we had a dozen or more of those, including some of the crew that were on board, turning up in both locations. Two sketches done by William Bell, the master shipbuilder we know built it. Both of them match beautifully with our remains on the beach. So with the artifacts, the hull, and the research evidence, we have the General Hunter on the beach. That's the way the site looks now, or looked a couple of years ago. In fact, the breakwater around it has degraded quite a bit over the last few months because of the fall and winter storms. It doesn't look a bit like that now, but I am working with the town on that. There's lots of protection over the ship still, over the wreck, about 6 feet or a couple of meters, as far as we can tell, and the town has indicated it will continue to work with me on that kind of protection. So to site designation, the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada is the federal board we're talking about. There's the website, pc.gc.ca, and you click on National Historic Sites, but as I'm sure you understand, if you just Google anything like that, you'll end up on the site. Now, I can't go through it all. I have some of the documents here, but I won't go through them all. I'm sure your staff will be undertaking that anyway, or perhaps have already. But I will make a few points, just maybe 4 here and 4 following. The General Hunter does fit the historic sites criteria. Section 1D is the pertinent section there. I did call the staff in Ottawa, and they confirmed that as best, they can't say for sure, but they confirmed that this was a likely candidate. The designation does not affect site ownership, which would be important to you. It does require consent of property owners. The province of Ontario owns the land, it's Crown land, as I understand it. I could be corrected on this, but Town of Saugeen Shores has a management agreement which takes care of all of the day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year activities on the beach, I'm fairly certain. Because of the possible land claim involvement, First Nations would be involved, but I did have a meeting with Chief Vern Root last week, and he confirmed that he has no problem with the designation going ahead, and in fact, he did say he would fully support it because of its historic significance. So that seems to be important. I don't have that in writing, but he has indicated he will get that to me. It does not require any additional town costs because the town already monitors and maintains the beach on a continuing basis, and if you live here, you know that that is done on a pretty exceptional basis. So that's not a concern. 4 other points. The designation does not provide or require any special protection for the site. It does ensure continuing awareness of the site, ongoing monitoring and maintenance by owners, managers, and public, which to me is an extremely important point because at some point when I pass on to the other side, I would like to make sure that people are aware of it. And the town works people here have been exceptional. They really are aware of it, and they focused on it from the beginning. But we're all going to pass on to the other side at some point, so this will ensure some ongoing high profile for it. It does focus public attention on the site, providing potential for tourist visitor interest in coming to it. And it does validate the importance of the site, encouraging its use as an historical and educational focus. Both of those have not been exploited, and I would suggest that perhaps with this kind of designation, that would be more of the point. General Hunter is already on at least one plaque. That's the kind of plaque that they put on the site. You can see it there. 1812, the General Hunter, Queen Charlotte, built here, took part in the capture of Detroit. That's at the Royal Navy Yard in Amherstburg now. So that's what I'd like to see end up there. Maybe more to it than that, but something like that. We're talking about renewing the sign, which is a little worn at this point, but down the road. Now, this process takes anywhere up to 2 years, so this is not going to happen very immediately. Just a couple other examples of sites that are in existence. So I'm asking for the support of council as I move forward with this application process, which could take up to 2 years, as I say. In the historic site's website, in the section consent of property owners, it does indicate if the site does belong to a large number of owners, consent may take the form of a municipal resolution supporting the application. And I would suggest that applies in this particular case too, where it's Crown land, town managed. I'm hoping you'll find the pursuing designation a worthwhile effort, and after your due diligence, will provide me with such a supporting resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Castlefy. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber?
Thank you very much, Ken, for the presentation, and certainly the pictures that we got in our package included more, and I know everybody's had a chance to look at them. An important step in this process, too, was to have some recognition from the Municipal Heritage Committee. Unfortunately, our minutes from our last meeting aren't yet available for council, but I just want everybody to know that the Municipal Heritage Committee is 100% behind this, if not 150% behind it. So certainly that was a step in the process, but the timing just didn't mean that there was enough time to get those minutes here ahead of this meeting. So I just wanted that to be noted. And this is a wonderful idea. And I guess, Ken, you did set out that it meant this, this, and this. The plaque, the federal government would pay for the plaque.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken. I've had the pleasure of being a tour guide for the last couple of years on the Chantry Island tour boats, and I have to say that this part of the tour is something that tourists are always very compelled by. It's an amazing story, and I think because we have the tour, we have the site on the beach, and then we have the wonderful exhibit in the museum. So I think it can only mean great things for our town. Thank you for your work on it.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the exhibit. I didn't, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't comment here, but I did mention the exhibit because there isn't time, but I'm glad that you had a chance to see it and enjoyed it.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Ken, once again, congratulations on all your work. And I did get a chance to see the Hunter when it was excavated, and it was certainly compelling. From your story and the history of it, am I right to say that it was in American hands when it eventually met its demise?
Yes, it was. It was a U.S. Army transport. The Army bought it and used it as a transport. It came over here. It didn't have a very high profile after that because I think, the war was just over, and I think there was a little nervousness about that. So the general dispatched a couple of ships up to take everything off they could, burn what was left, and get out of there.
Would there be any interest or any worth pursuing the American military or American heritage to society, whatever their designation is, to make a designation themselves, being that it was their ship at the time, and maybe you want to have a co-designation?
Well, I think it would encourage some U.S. visitors maybe to come, because I know people do go to historic sites. And it had occurred to me, but of course we're just at the first step in the process.
Yeah, and just having returned from a trip south of the border, they take their heritage sites very seriously, especially when they're military heritage sites.
Well, that's
be worth pursuing, and like you say, it would put it on their tourist maps as well.
Well, it's one of the reasons that I'm interested in, because I want to raise the profile. I think that it's a worthy little vessel that did a great job and was important in an unfortunate situation where it was a loss, but still it fought in the Battle of Lake Erie. There were only 2 traditional naval engagements in the whole War of 1812. Lots of action on the lake, but only 2 engagements like that. This was one of them. The other was in Lake Champlain. So it was a significant event it was involved in.
Certainly. And once again, to the motion that will eventually get on the floor, I will certainly be supporting it, as I'm confident most of the colleagues around the room will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I love our American cousins, but their loss is our gain, and it's rightfully back that His Majesty's ship should be back where it is. Was it His Majesty?
Yes, George
It
the
would have
Fourth or the Third.
So my question to you would be the designation. I'm all in favor of HMS, but is that where we should be, or should we be the General Hunter and not HMS? How are you making that decision that it would be the HMS General Hunter?
Well, because it was a royal ship. It was a Royal Navy vessel at the end. It wasn't always. It was built as a provincial marine vessel, but at the end it was a Royal Navy vessel, and it was crewed and captained by a Royal Navy officer, which I think may have been part of the problem at the Battle of Lake Erie, but that's another story.
So your pardon me, excuse me, everyone, but I see this as an anchor for for a future nautical museum, exclusive nautical museum in Southampton. So I wonder if we could do more in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Grayson, then we get.
If we're telling stories, I was just going to say one of the things that people are most fascinated by on the tour is the fact that the passengers on the ship and the crew survived and rowed to Detroit.
Rode and I would expect sailed. It was the ship's boat, but it probably would have had a small sail on it. But,
it's pretty
and in
amazing.
a week, it only took them a week.
Yes. Escaped. I don't think anybody even knew they were there, right?
Oh, that's
it was 1816, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Just two comments. First of all, it was, I believe, one of the few times that the Americans released some sort of artifact to come to Canada due to Ken's good reputation. The flag that they'd captured came back to the museum in Southampton, and maybe we'll get it back again for a little while at some future date. I think it's important to note, and Ken, you didn't say it yet, but there is only one other National Historic Site in Bruce County. It's the Point Clark Lighthouse. So, playing on that marine heritage thing, this fits in nicely with, somebody looking for marine heritage sites. And the only other closest one is
Billy Bishop
in Owen Sound.
But that's Gray, of course.
Yeah. So certainly this would be a very good avenue to
there are 267 sites across Canada. A lot of them are focused, or in Ontario, a lot of them are focused down in the Niagara region and have to do with the War of 1812, actually. But there's not much up here. I don't know why our lighthouse is not designated. There's a special process for lighthouses, so that might be a next step that somebody might look at.
So how do we follow through and make sure that this kind of gets in the hopper so that whatever staff report has to comes?
Yeah, I think you mentioned Heritage Committee. I think there's a recommendation that came from the Heritage Committee that will come to here, and I think from there then we will proceed with a motion of support and whatever else. I think we'd ask staff the best way to proceed with this and whatever that's a motion, and we'll probably deal with that in the very near future. So I'm sure there's all kinds of support for it, Mike or Ken. But I one comment I will say is that this from the very beginning you put together a body of knowledge around this artifact that's amazing, and it's really put I think really put this area raised the profile of it here, even at the museum and at the beach. So I really want to thank you for that. I know you're very passionate about it, and I hope we're here to see the plaque put up before you go to the other side. Don't go there any real soon, McKen.
Could I just respond very quickly? And you get tired of hearing this, I think, so do the staff and the rest. But if the people of the town of Saugeen Shores hadn't supported it the way it did from the beginning, I wouldn't be standing here. I just would not be here. Mike Sterling and the town of Saugeen Shores, and I wouldn't be here. So once again, a public thanks to the terrific support.
Yeah, I recall when you started. Go ahead. One more comment. Go ahead.
Do you have your book there?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
The book is in the library.
Several reports, but
well, it's just the
town
book.
has all those on file.
The book is called what? Coffins of
the Brave.
And there's a chapter in there.
Chapter in here on HMS General Hunter. This book is in the Port Elgin Library and in the Southampton Library. I don't know if it's all the time, but you probably could get a hold of it, or you can buy it. But I don't get anything from it, so I'm not worried about that. As most of you know who've done any academic type of writing, you don't get anything for it. You just get it published, that's all, which is fine. So, but it's there, and it'll be in all the books on War of 1812 shipwrecks from now on, for sure. Coffins of the Brave, edited by Kevin J. Chrisman.
Thanks very much, and I'm sure if staff needs any support, that we can certainly get a hold of you or any other guidelines. Ken, so thanks very much again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Good, thank you. Our next deputation is Joanne Robbins from the Chamber of Commerce, and she's here about the Saugeen Shores Tourism Report. Welcome, Joanne. And I believe you have, oh yes.
I don't have a timer. I know I need one. All right, I've got it down to 10 minutes, I believe. I want to thank you, your worship and council, for allowing us the time to update you regarding last year's tourism numbers and initiatives. We know we have time constraints this evening, so I will move quickly through the slides. We've supplied council with 2 larger reference and supporting documents, which I hope they will take the time to look at. Certainly call me and come in and chat about any of them. So I'll try to keep it short and to the point. Oh, for those of you who don't know, I'm sorry. This is Cheryl Beamish, our tourism coordinator. And I think you all know me. I'm Joanne Robbins. Oh, this first slide reiterates our fulfillment mandates as stated in our contract with the town. And right to the numbers. This slide shows that our total tracked inquiries in 2014 were just over 92,000. Tracking includes email, phone, walk-ins, snail mail, and fax. Staff is trained to track all inquiries and are very diligent, but there are busy times when some counts are missed. You'll notice a slight decrease from last year's numbers. We don't really see this as a bad thing. Decrease in inquiries can indicate that the tourism website is doing its job and that our self-service kiosks are also doing their job. You'll note that Southampton seems to have a significantly lower number, but that's because as our second tourism office, it doesn't get the web inquiries. They all go to Port Elgin. So that's why you see that number there. It is busy, as busy or busier. Okay, this is a breakdown of the method of contact that our visitors use. If you take 92,000 inquiries and spread it out over a year, that's about 253 questions answered per day, which obviously takes up a lot of staff time. But of course, a lot of our inquiries take place in the summer months. It's really hard to say the average time spent on an inquiry. Some are as easy as directing the visitor to existing information or stakeholder websites. Other questions can eat up time researching or finding the answer. All email inquiries are responded to within 24 hours. Phone and personal visits are answered immediately, of course. In this chart, you'll see our 6-year comparison. We could do you a 20-year comparison almost, but we figure back 6 years is good enough. This is the method of contact over 6 years. It shows that, of course, as email inquiries rose, we saw a decline in visits and phone calls. But all methods of contact have remained steady since 2012. So it'll be very interesting to see if this maintains this level over the next couple of years as well. This slide shows what the visitors ask for. And this is consistent with other years, as you'll see in the comparison slide. We continue to see the growth of inquiries about local events. This trend speaks to continuing our work with the town and other partners to keep special events and programming as a priority, and which further confirms that events are a demand generator. These next two slides show visitor origins. I want to point out a couple items. First, the first chart, all that green, that represents local. To us, local means within a half-hour drive and all the summer residents. The high number of locals show that we are of service to the whole community, not just the visitors. This also reinforces the trend which Bruce County and Ontario Tourism are following, the staycation, the play in your own backyard advertising. The next pie chart, I've removed the locals, not that they're not important, but this way we can see the out-market visitation numbers and compare the trends in our next chart. So there are no real surprises here. Kitchener-Waterloo is unchanged. We're up 1 or 2 percentage points for most everything else, which is all good news. We're kind of back to our 2009 numbers. Kitchener-Waterloo, the GTA, and other Ontario still remain our top 3 out-market draws. And I wanted to note that while we market to the GTA and Kitchener-Waterloo, other Ontario seems to be all organic. Now, I shouldn't say that because our visitor guides go there, and I know that the county and RTO7 advertise to them, but we don't market to other Ontario in any way. This is just a list of our key chamber tourism initiatives that support and benefit our tourism efforts. The next is just a map of where the visitor's guide is sent to throughout Ontario and the border states. And then on to local events. If you look back to our requested information chart, we already noted that local events are a major demand generator and the most asked question. So these events don't have to be big. They can be a church supper. They hold appeal to our visitor and they keep tourism alive. Our Chamber Tourism Special Event Team, with aid from our partners at the town, are kept busy with our yearly events. In 2014, events throughout Ontario took a financial hit, ours included. But I just came back from FEO, so they were all crying the blues. FEO is Festival and Events Ontario, and no events did super well last year. But they all agree that local economic impact of events outweighs any deficits incurred, and the fact that events are a demand generator, they're a necessity. And I wanted to talk about a couple of successes last year. Last year we proposed investment from council for a portion of the cost of 4 self-service kiosks. So we put 4 up, and they were up by Canada Day. In July and August, they had to be filled a minimum of 2 times daily. We had to order more visitors' guides, 5,000 more. They were an instant success. We were too busy filling them and printing flyers to track them properly, which we will do in 2015. But our loose estimate, just by the people that filled them and took books out, is that the kiosks used over 7,200 visitors' guides through July and August, and over 5,000 of the support pieces that were included in the bottom. The rail trail was one of them. Joyce eventually cut me off of rail trail flyers. So the goal of the chamber this year, because this is a joint initiative, is to try and make these self-sustaining. Not by selling ads around them, but on some of our support material. This is just for fun. Our t-shirts this year, the Ask Me t-shirts, was another new initiative. Our staff was highly visible everywhere they went and got stopped everywhere they went, and it allowed for more public engagement. We will certainly continue this practice. The 2014 Southampton Stroll was a county initiative, part of Explore the Bruce. And it drove foot traffic to Southampton. We were very involved in the launch and implementation of the stroll, and I believe one of your supplemental packages has the full report from the Southampton Stroll and the survey. I'm now switching gears to our fall advertising campaign. Last year, we were successful in obtaining RTO7 digital marketing partnership funding. So for a $10,000 investment, our money was turned into a $30,000 fall digital out-marketing campaign. Besides being very successful, as you can see in the full report supplied to you, this collaborative partnership investment really gave us a great learning opportunity. It gave us a chance to see what works, what doesn't in digital marketing, plus it gave us recommendations for future campaigns. We were very impressed with the outcome, and we'll be considering all those recommendations and suggestions in any future marketing. As RTO7 will be continuing its partnership funding, We may consider trying to do another campaign if I can get all the partners together and all the money. Facebook stats. The tourism Facebook chart reiterates the effectiveness of our fall campaigns and the strength of our community's fall shoulder season events. Where we need work is the spring shoulder season. It's an untapped opportunity. I know I've told council before, working with the town, we are looking at some ideas for that. We have a wonderful Huron Fringe Birding Festival, but we just don't seem to grab the visitors in the month of June. And people engaged in our tourism Facebook page. We doubled our likes in 2014. We found it interesting when we compared our visitor origins to this pie chart, which is our Facebook friends, and they all tell a similar story. So we are approaching the right people. The women as opposed to men was just kind of for fun. We know that women are more engaged and they plan the trips. So we will consider that when we market as well. And sub-trends. Our busiest season remains summer, followed by fall, spring, then winter. The demand for week-long stays is still on the decline. People are looking for shorter getaways and day tripping opportunities. Most visitors to Saugeen Shores are traveling for pleasure, for on holiday. VFR means visiting friends and relatives, which you will hear a lot from Ministry of Tourism people. But we have that traffic consistently remains high with us. We've tapped into this trend. We've worked to better educate the locals and the businesses about things to see and do, while increasing our presence as tourism ambassadors. With the increase in people desiring experiences as well as activities, our trails are market ready. And that's what we sold in our fall campaign last year. Our trails are wonderful. They're market ready. They're very well used, and they're an attraction. Cycling has become one of our top demand generators as well, and it continues to grow. So we feel that stakeholders should keep this in mind. Last year's goals. This was my chart from last year. We wanted the 24-hour kiosks. We feel they were a very great success. The tourism website has been doing fantastic things. The numbers are good, which Brad will tell you about in the next presentation. We feel we've met or even exceeded some of those goals, and we feel very good about it. And we're continuing on with this year's goals. The special event team partnership is our partnership with the town. I guess that's what we're calling ourselves with community services. We work together. That team is in place. We've held one successful community outreach meeting and are continuing with individual consults with nonprofits and special events in Saugeen Shores. The team has finalized next steps for 2015, which I'm sure you'll see a staff report about at some point. The second thing there, the sharing services, the Chamber and Tourism with various partners, we're already exploring the possibilities of sharing services for mutually beneficial cost savings. We continue to train and upgrade our staff skills, and the programming bullet there, that's about programming with the town and BIA partnerships. Again, focusing on those events, small or large, that keep the action going in both our towns and keep the visitors engaged. And Pumpkin Fest, the Pumpkin Fest and Chamber Board have met and are committed to financially supporting the event with the development of some kind of strat plan, sustainability audit. I am not sure what that looks like yet. We're still researching what it is we need to bring in, but to get that 5-year plan and step Pumpkin Fest up that notch. So I will keep you posted on that. It's just really exciting to know that both boards understand the importance of the event to the community. And then finally, we have to do it all within our existing budget. So I wanted to encourage you to look over the information we supported, and I didn't know, Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to do questions and comments now, or let Brad talk about the website and then have us all come back up.
I think, anybody for questions now, or wait for the second presentation. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thanks. Joanne, I just was curious to get a comment from you. You mentioned the success of the kiosks, and certainly the visitor guide is a big document. I just was curious, are there plans afoot to create more of the more immediate sort of events and local attractions? Because people are already here, so chances are, the visitor guide, which is more of a lure kind of thing, it's a big piece. Are you sort of shifting focus in terms of print?
The brochures underneath, Diane, match the website. There are things to do, where to eat, where to stay, and events, and the events. So that, the paper pieces are there.
Yeah, my question is really, because you said you reprinted the visitor guide to...
But I ordered more this year. Apparently they like it in their hand when they arrive. That came from Roger Brooks. I thought you got your visitor guides out there, but apparently once you arrive, they like that piece of paper to go through while they're at the beach, the guide.
Okay, then my second comment is this success that was evident with the Southampton stroll idea. Is there a plan within our own community to continue that programming and also add in a Port Elgin package that is the itinerary or the agenda? And that comes from Roger Brooks. That's
right. The itineraries,
is that in the works?
You'll see more itinerary in the visitor's guide this year. We've already created, I think there's 6 on the website that we've uploaded to Brad to put on the website. So that itinerary idea is definitely there. The stroll, I've talked with the Southampton BIA, and they're just not ready yet, but we're talking about what can we do. So that very good idea.
Too.
Yeah.
And Wyerton had an example last year that after they were a stroll, so to speak, I can't remember what it was called when they did it, they tried the Wyerton Wednesdays thing.
Yep.
I don't know if it worked well for them. Every time I was there, it was too cold, and there wasn't a lot of people around. But,
certainly, that's all on our radar, Diane. Thank you for the comments.
And I just, this sustainability idea with Pumpkin Fest, will there be an opportunity, do you think, in that for community involvement? Because, one of the issues is that, on a bad weather year, you still got all these local people, so it's always good to tap into them. And if they think it's too expensive or it's just for the out-of-town visitors, you got a disconnect there that can give you that cushion when it is a bad year for weather.
The 2 companies we're talking with that do this kind of work, which there aren't a lot of them because up here we're the guys that everybody comes to. So we're going to... through Festival Events Ontario, we found a couple companies, and their suggestion is very similar to that, except all stakeholders. So that would be the nonprofit groups that work at Pumpkin Fest, everybody else. They didn't really say a public meeting, but when you think about it, that's everybody in town. Yeah, so you're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I think probably we'll take Brad, and if we have any other questions, we'll get back to you, ladies. Thank you very much, Joanne and Cheryl. The next deputation then is Brad Smith from Tourist Town, and he's here about our tourism report. Welcome, Brad.
All right. I just want to start off by saying thanks for listening to me speak about the website for a bit. So just to go a little bit of a backstory, because this happened a while ago, it's quite a unique arrangement that we came to as a private-public partnership. I haven't heard of any other place doing it anywhere. So it's the whole idea was to see a good website in a small town, and having a zero cost to the town was an attractive offer. So what we did, we provided everything that was already being provided in the existing format, and then to provide value to businesses to fund our business, they were able to purchase and upgrade themselves. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that works out well, but we don't have time to talk about that right at the moment. And as far as the websites, when we took on the project, there was the one Saugeen Shores, which was the mandate for what was being promoted to the public, and at the same time we also did a Port Elgin and Southampton one to tie in with some of the other things that were happening out there as far as what are people actually looking for. So these graphs, I think, are a pretty interesting and obvious statement of what's happening out there. The Saugeen Shores, and this is done over the 3-year period, starting in July, all the way up to just a couple of days ago. So as you can see at the top, Saugeen Shores has been pretty consistent. It's starting to grow. You can see in the off-season it's starting to grow a bit thicker down the bottom, and the bell curve is very consistent. And then you see with the Port Elgin site, you can see started basically at nothing and has consistently grown and will continue to grow based on those stats, as well as Southampton. So that to me tells that's an obvious statement of who people are looking for. And the other thing to keep in mind is that Saugeen Shores has been promoted, but Port Elgin and Southampton have not been promoted at all. So these are the actual numbers, and you can see the page views, and it's fairly obvious to have a look. As you see, these ones here, so this is done over a 12-month period, just to break it down a little bit for you, so you can see the key. So over 12 months, Southampton started with 33,000. So these are page views. As you can see, in 1 year it jumped over 100,000 views, which is quite incredible. And then in this year, which is only 8 months, we've already surpassed last year's stats, and we're not even into the beginning of the shoulder season. So I'm assuming that'll be up to probably 180 by the time the year is up. So I think you would agree that's a fairly remarkable increase. And the same, Saugeen Shores, as you can see, in the first year, 318. The second year down was 313. So there's actually a decrease there. And it's consistent and it's safe, and that's fine. There's a lot of people going to the site through the corporate site, and also a lot of residents as well. And the Port Elgin site is doing very well as well, based on those stats. And just to give you a little bit of an update, basically the whole system that we're building we're continually working on it, and because of the agreement we have, the town isn't paying anything when we update it, and the whole point of it is the better we make the site, then the more people we're going to have actually paying to be on it. So it comes back to competition and making us make the site better. So we did create a completely mobile site design in 2014, which was quite an undertaking, and we have just implemented monthly payment option for businesses to give them more flexibility, and it's very cheap. The offers that we're making, all the content is ranked by content as opposed to alphabetically, which is traditionally done, because obviously in a government organisation you can't play favours. So as opposed to the way Google does it, where they actually base it on content. So it's much more effective, and people find the standout assets that you have to offer. We're in the process right now, we're just finishing up this week, the accommodation module, which is going to be a huge, which will be used by tourism staff, which will replace their existing format, which should save a huge amount of time. And we are in the process of designing the site. It's now 4 years old, so it's time for a refresh, and that's our goal, is to keep it an ongoing dynamic site.
Thank you, Brad. So, any questions for Brad or Joanne and Cheryl? Councillor Mike Maya.
I just had a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you for the presentation, Brad. It seemed 4 years ago we were talking about whether this would be a good or a bad thing for the town of Saugeen Shores, and I think you've proven in partnership with the Chamber Tourism Office that a plan of this nature can work, and it is working. And you take a look out 2 years, and you'll be probably approaching 1 million hits. I think that says a lot that the site is working. And I wanted to just thank Larry too. The agreement. I'll be looking forward to supporting the bylaw a little later on the agenda. But I think it's a good news story, and I just want to thank you for all your great work and for the cooperation between the two parties. I think it's worked really, really well. So hats off.
Other questions or comments? And you get off very lucky tonight. Thank you both very much, and thanks very much, Brad and Joanne and Cheryl again. The next item on the agenda is a staff report and has to do with the 2015 municipal capital budget, and our Director of Finance, Kate Allen, will present.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. So this is sort of our next step along the budget process. Following several capital and operating budget review meetings, Council and staff have tentatively finalized the 2015 budget, and the total projected tax levy increase is approximately $620,000. This includes new tax dollars provided through growth, as well as a final tax levy where we're sitting right now of 3.86%. This is the combined operating and capital increase that we're looking at right now based on all of the discussions that we've had in previous meetings. It was our original intention to bring forward both budgets tonight in their final draft stage. However, there are a few items on the agenda this evening which may have an impact on the operating budget. So the hope was that we could still move forward with the 2015 capital budget tonight for your approval, and this will give staff the opportunity to initiate some of these larger projects and get started with RFPs and things like that as we work towards finalizing the operating budget and incorporating any other changes. So in the capital budget, all of the changes approved by motion at the February 4th meeting have been incorporated, and they're in the budget that has been attached. I've tried to highlight them in yellow if there has been a change at that meeting. I'm not certain that the copies, depending on which copy you have, whether it is colored or not. This is the total capital program is currently sitting at about $5.6 million, and this is a reduction of about $2.5 million from the capital program in 2014. The program is funded by non-tax revenues of $4.4 million, including water and sewer rates, transfers from reserves, as well as grants and donations. The net burden that we're currently applying to the tax levy is $1.2 million, and this is an increase over 2014 of approximately $80,000 and represents about a 0.75% total levy increase dedicated to capital. In addition to the approved changes that came out of the February 4th meeting, staff did commit to providing information about the replacement of the decorative exterior lighting at the Southampton Town Hall. The 2015 capital budget currently includes funds to replace the front steps and to remove the existing lighting that staff has determined to be unsafe. The estimate for the amount to install new lighting would be roughly $45,000, and this amount is currently not included in the capital budget. So the package has 3 schedules. The first one being Schedule A is the actual detailed capital budget with each department spreadsheet. Some of the major projects I've highlighted here, implementation of the IT master plan, the replacement of the SCBA pack and mask equipment at the fire department, renovations to improve storage and space efficiencies at the police station, a purchase of a Quint unit for the fire fleet, as well as other vehicle and equipment replacements. Some of the major roads work include Waterloo Street reconstruction, continuing work on Adelaide Street, Stafford Street and Catherine, as well as the Dull Side Road resurfacing, drainage improvements along Highway 21, and as Council will recall, we were approved for the accessibility grant, so we have in there this year the improvements at High Street and the Victoria intersection in Southampton. The next schedule is Schedule B, and this is a summary of our entire capital program in 2014. But what I've tried to do is highlight the items that weren't complete at the end of the year and will be have additional costs incurred in 2015. So although they're not included in our capital budget, there are continuing costs associated with them. Those items are highlighted in yellow, and there is a column called Carry Forward, and you'll see if it is carried forward, the word yes beside the project. So some of those projects that are being carried forward include bridge rehabilitation, intersection improvements at Goderich and Green, Morpeth Crosswalk, Goderich and Devonshire, continuing implementation of the Port Elgin Streetscape Plan. There are several roads construction projects that require top coat asphalt that will be completed in the spring, and those include Getty Street, Saugeen Street, Eugenie Street, Market Street, Waterloo, as well as some additional work at Adelaide. There's still the completion of the LED conversion, the water meter upgrade program in Port Elgin, as well as the slope stabilization in the Pioneer Cemetery, and the Wi-Fi servicing for downtown Port Elgin was not initiated in 2014 but has been carried forward. And then finally, Schedule C is also for your reference. It just outlines the sort of continuity of the 2014 in reserve and reserve fund activity and the projected estimated year-end balances for December 2015. I will point out we're still working on our December year-ends, so there's are subject to change there between now and when you receive that report in April. Any questions?
Thank you. I'll read the recommendation and then we'll take any questions. It's recommended that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Saugeen Shores approve the municipal capital budget for the year 2015 as follows. Expenditures, capital $5,633,350. Revenues, $4,421,729. For total municipal taxation, $1,211,621. Excuse me. That the Town of Saugeen Shores capital tax levy be set at $1,211,621 to finance the capital budget of the municipality for the year 2015. That the approved capital levy be combined with the operating levy to be presented to the Committee of the Whole on March the 23rd, 2015 in order to determine the total tax levy for the municipality for 2015. Questions, comments? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to apologize for the lateness of this, but at this point, with everything that we have going on with the pool and stuff, I was wondering, or I'd like to know if we could move the Recreation Master Plan that was budgeted for 2016 into this year's budget to help further our plans for whatever it is that we have to do with the recreation. It's best to look at it all right now rather than to piecemeal it. I've talked with Kate, and she has ideas of how to fund this that will have no effect on the budget.
Down would be a motion to amend this motion and add that to as a project. So if you can have a mover and a seconder to that, and we'll take it orally, I think, this evening. So you're I'll let you phrase it again. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I'm moving that we bring forward the Recreation Master Plan that was budgeted for 2016 to be included in the 2015 budget.
Maybe before we get a seconder of that, I'd like to hear, Kate, your suggestions about how we would fund this. I seen a little smile there, and I'm really interested in your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had prepared some funding options. I wouldn't necessarily say that they are all neutral on the budget. So one option would be to fund that straight through the tax levy, and that would add an additional 0.15% roughly to the overall levy, bringing us just over 4%. The other option would be to defer an existing project and use the funds that are currently allocated to that project towards the Recreation Master Plan. And the third option, you do have the schedule of reserves in front of you, would be to identify an appropriate reserve, such as the Future Capital Projects Reserve, and to use additional funds from those reserves to fund it, and in which case it would not have any impact on the tax levy.
Just again for clarification, and the 0.15% on the levy, and that is to fund the entire study. So I guess I suggest you're saying that.
Sorry, I said 0.15. I should say 0.45, approximately half
0.45. Okay, so another 0.5%. Yeah, so it's about $45,000 or $50,000 to do the study.
That's correct, I believe.
So maybe if you can give a suggestion of how you would like us to do that through the motion, Don, it might help. Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Kate, how is it going to be funded in 2016?
At this point, we haven't allocated funding to any of the 2016 budget items. That being said, I would anticipate it would likely be funded through taxation in 2016 due to the nature of the expense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very concerned about all of this. It's really unfortunate to approve one part of a budget that has two components to it, and so we don't have the other piece of the budget for valid reasons, obviously, but, we're being asked to, in isolation from operating, approve this. I find it a little discouraging, too, that in the end, yeah, it sounds nice that it's a dedicated levy increase of 0.73%, but that's troublesome to me, too, because it's not even a 1% increase in capital expenditure for the community, but we certainly, that's not putting us any further ahead, and it's we've got a greater increase just with growth than that, and I just think that it would behoove us to take a step back and really think about this. I don't see any debt financing for anything, and I'm okay with that, except there's a place to include debt in the funding of capital opportunities. I don't think also that we've completely captured areas that need to be captured. For example, continuing work on Adelaide Street is there, but it's nothing at the highway. And the challenge with that project is it's the highway access that is going to cause some problems. And if we're not putting any money there to deal with that, are we okay with just letting that ride for another year? I also think that what's commented here about the police station, the renovations to improve the storage and space efficiencies, I did understand from our budget meetings that there were significant challenges about the air quality and HVAC equipment, and I didn't think that we had completely discounted that off the list, but it would appear to have disappeared now. So and I also find it a little bit confusing to me, certainly I can only imagine how it is for everybody. We, on February the 4th, received some information about reserves, and the numbers, I would have expected, them to be fairly close to where they should end up, but now the most recent package, the reserve numbers are in some cases really different than what we got on February the 4th, and so I don't believe that, we have the opportunity to sort of look at this, in a more detailed kind of way, but I have more detailed questions because there's some significant changes in numbers that I just want to ask why. And I guess I'm disappointed that, we're being asked to push this through without the other part of the budget before us. And, certainly I understand why it's kind of important to move things along, but I just don't understand the urgency. And also, it's a lot of information, a lot of little changes, but some items that I thought would have been in here, for example, the landfill capital charge, which was $25 per ratepayer, which was in addition to bag tags, so that seems to be confusing out there in the public. I thought that was about a landfill reserve, but now it sort of seems like it's going into operating, so perhaps I've missed something along the way, but I have been paying attention. And I just, I don't understand what the urgency is right now that this isn't deserving of a meeting all on its own. And I'm very, very concerned that we're, keeping the increase low, but still we're having a 3 point whatever or 4% increase in the tax levy being talked about, but less than 1% of that is for capital. Capital is the tangible stuff that, I'm not too sure that I'm okay with the balance being skewed so much to operating when it's an increase overall. So I don't know what to do here because I think it's we're being asked for too much without the corresponding information that we need to balance it all out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I wanted to congratulate Councillor Matheson for bringing forward the request to move forward with the Recreation Master Plan. I think it's something that we very much need to do, and I certainly was looking forward to supporting it in the 2016 budget to see the master plan move forward. I want to take a little different approach, I think, in that the development of a recreation master plan is going to take some time, some staff time. It's going to take, we've got a new committee coming on board. I think tonight there's a report talking about a committee with a recreation component to it. I'd like to see that committee have some input into the into the terms of reference that need to be developed for a recreation master plan. Terms of reference do take time, and I'm just wondering if, as a show of support, I mean, I do support the recreation master plan development, but I would much prefer we direct staff to move forward with the development of terms of reference for a recreation master plan. So we plan from that perspective without a financial commitment today. But for staff to move forward, there's lots of other studies out there that can be compared, and there's some benchmarking to do with recreation master planning that I'm sure our director of community services can put her hands on fairly quickly. But perhaps in the next few months, with taking it through our new committee that may be approved tonight, that we develop the terms of reference for the recreation master plan, bring it back to capital budget in November for discussion, or October, November for discussion. I for one would much prefer that we do it that way. And by saying that we're going to be developing terms of reference for a recreation master plan, I think it buys into Councillor Matheson's thinking that we do need it, and I do support it. So that would be my plan of attack for that particular motion.
I think the way to move forward here is if we can get a seconder for Don's motion and some direction about how he would like to fund this, and then we can have that discussion, and then we can go back to the main motion. So, okay, go ahead.
So maybe I could ask Director of Public Works and the Director of Finance to give us an update on, in advance of where we are now, to discuss the Waterloo, Catherine and Stafford Streets reconstruction capital budget number versus the number that is in your report tonight. What's the difference? There was 600,000 for Waterloo Street. We're going to recommend 787,000 for the total project. So I just wasn't sure. I'm asking this question in case there's an obvious difference in the numbers. This is going up, so it puts more emphasis on where we should be. And if it's going down and we're saving some money, then maybe that money can be directed to Councillor Matheson's request.
Certainly. So in the staff report, yet to be seen or discussed, I did identify a total funding requirement of $921,500 for the three projects combined, and the preliminary budget amount was just 1.07 million. However, again, this is a big project, and things do come up, so that's what the numbers are.
So 921 as opposed to 1,075,000?
What it says, yes.
So that's 79 and 75. That's almost possibly 150,000 variance in our favor.
Possibly.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, that's funded from different sources because some of that is funded from water and sewer. So only a portion of that will be for the roads. So
I would just like to get that.
That's fine. Yep. And I think we okay. And I'm going to go back to Councillor Matheson here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You asked me which funding proposal I would prefer to do it from. I really do not want to put a tax burden on the levy rate now, because as we come up with a plan, we know that there's going to be a tax levy increase then. I would prefer that the funds come from reserve for this project, and later on we'll go into the levy.
Okay, that's fine. Then I guess what we should have is a seconder for that, so that the motion that Councillor Matheson is suggesting, and again, summarize, you're seconding? Okay, so we're seconding, and I guess the motion is that we will include reserve money in this year's budget to start a recreation master plan for the sum of $40,000. Okay. Okay. $45. Okay. So then go ahead. No, go ahead.
I agree that there's an opportunity in the next little while to do something with recreation. It's really obvious when you look at stuff that's been started and it's carried over that we've got a lot of things that have happened in the last little while that we haven't followed through on them. And so I'm hesitant to put something else on the list right now when we have things on the list that we haven't even come close to realizing what we're even going to do with them. And, another issue with the budget is, it sort of appears like we took out all the waterfront stuff, but, there's fixing this bathroom here, new equipment here, and so it's not still showing up as dedicated sort of areas, but I don't know how we proceed to add something else in when we have a lot of things in play right now that we don't seem to be doing anything with them, and I really am cautious about right now starting another process when we haven't even realized downtown stuff, and in both downtowns and the waterfront, and we've done the reports on those. We've had, and the pool's another thing on the list there too. And so I don't know if it's a good idea, because I think we're spreading ourselves incredibly thin right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Diane, okay. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has approved the motion of the pool project going ahead. I believe that we have to put everything recreation in as one. If there's going to be any government monies, any subsidies that could be coming up, we have to have a plan ready for us to be able to achieve and take that money to make our projects go. If we don't have something ready right now or within the next year, when funding could become available, we're going to be stuck, and we're going to be in the same place we are, in the same place we've been for the last 7-8 years. We have a plan, we have nothing to show for it.
Okay, Councillor Minaj. But, no, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Mayor, with thanks. And so I would ask that we identify, does doing a comprehensive recreation master plan put us further away from a shovel-ready project if government funding was suddenly to be released, or does it bring us closer? What is the answer to that question?
Well, I think we're trying to confuse two things here. We need an answer, certainly, and there's a report on the pool studies. That's, in my mind, that's completely separate from a recreation master plan. And a recreation master plan will be much like I envision, much like our master trails plan that sets out some ways of doing particular. First, it's going to do a whole lot of inventory and what we're already doing, and then set out some objectives that we would hope to meet in the future. So I think we need to keep those two projects completely separate.
I'm just asking you, Mr. Mayor, to explain to me and to others if the recreation master plan will help us become shovel-ready on any future projects where government funding could be available, or it will get in the way. If we agree with the previous pool study that's going to take place, if they complete that work, is someone in some federal or provincial ministry going to say, well, you should have had a master plan to back that up, or will it stand alone and say, we are ready, we have agreed on something this year, and we can go ahead? Thank you.
I don't know how I can answer that, whether there will be. I think if you look at the provincial government, they presently have a $12 billion deficit. And it's, in my mind, very unlikely that they're going to have any new funding programs from the provincial government for the foreseeable future, at least until 2018, when they said they were going to try and balance that budget. In fact, what you will see is probably some more of this downloading in some different ways that we will be responsible for more money. So I don't want to discourage you on that. I would go back to Diane's comments. I think we've got an awful lot on our plate this year. We've got a waterfront, we've got downtown improvement, we've got a pool issue. We potentially have 3 new committees that are going to need new staff members. There's, again, a budget considerations for that. I think we need to be careful when we try and do everything. We invariably don't get to where we want to be, and you raise some expectations that are very difficult to meet. So I'm not against the master plan, Don. I absolutely agree with you, but I just think we can't do everything right now. Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I just reiterating what I was saying earlier, I think plates are very full, and I'm the first one to put my hand up in October, November capital budget or operation budget session to support a recreation master plan. There's no doubt at all in my mind I'll be supporting it. My concern is we've got a new committee coming on board, Recreation and Active Transportation Committee. It's going to take a month or two or three to be, to get up and running. And one of these committee responsibilities is policies regarding planning, development, direction of recreation, active transportation, annual service rates and fees. I just think it's too soon in my mind to prove it this evening. I can't support that motion to prove it this evening. I will be supporting it this October, November. Once that committee is up and running, they'd be charged with developing the terms of reference for a recreation master plan, and let's get going with it and discuss it this fall. So I support what you're doing, Councillor Matheson, but I just can't.
We'll get to Councillor Myatt, and then we're going to get to the question. We've had lots of discussion on this. Councillor Dave Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to any motion that it contemplates additional reports and mandates being given to staff, it always occurs to me that we should consult with the staff who are going to be charged with coming up with that. So I'd like to hear from the Director of Parks and Recreation as to what her opinion is as to whether it's an appropriate time to put something like this on the plate, or more merit be go towards what Councillor Mike Myatt is suggesting, which is to formulate a good terms of reference and set the plate to make it happen in earnest later on in the year.
I think maybe the best way to ask that, because I don't want to put you on the spot, Jane, to saying whether we should do it or we shouldn't do it. That's kind of unfair to you. I think maybe the way to phrase it is, how much additional work is this going to take, and how long will it take to do the terms of reference? And with all that we're going on, do you think we're staffed to really do it adequately? And maybe that's not a fair question either.
I truly believe that in order to have clear terms of reference, you need community involvement into that and some community consultation, and that's going to take time. It would certainly mean bringing on another ad hoc committee. Allison presents later this evening regarding the committees that we are visioning. I certainly would like to see, and I think the Recreation Master Plan should be part of a committee that we're looking at for a 2-year process, and that may be recommended tonight, a Recreation and Active Transportation Committee. I think that's a great project that they could have some really detailed information in developing, and a committee like that doesn't form overnight. It takes a good 2 years to garner those relationships and to determine what actually the community needs as a whole. So providing that continued community input, I believe that's probably the best avenue to take. Question.
Yeah, I think we'll take one more comment and then we'll get to the question. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to let everybody know, this is actually a two-part process. The first part is to bring the Recreation Master Plan. I don't expect it to be done by January. We know this is a long-term project, but it has to start at some time. The second part of this plan will be when our CAO brings forward the new ad hoc committees. I'll be proposing at the same time that we put forward a Recreation ad hoc committee to help formulate the process of what's going to be going, and we give information to our Recreation Master Plan. But if you don't start now, it's going to be like everything else. We'll wait till 2016, then we've got all this other stuff ready to go. Well, then it's going to be 2017. By that time, it's a new election era. Nothing's going to happen. I'm sorry. We've got all these projects, plans, yes. But from the people that I've been talking to in town, they are very, very interested and wanting this Recreation Master Plan to begin now so that we can start to improve the areas, the great places that we have, but make them more user-friendly and make Port Elgin, here's your buzzword, the real destination point of Bruce County.
So I think we've had a pretty good discussion, and this is just on the amendment. The amendment then is, and this is to include $45,000 from reserves in this year's capital budget to begin the process for a Recreation Master Plan. And I'm going to ask the question, all in favor of that amendment? Opposed? That carries. There we go. 4-3. Oh, it's defeated. Was it 4-4? It was a tie. Sorry, that's right. We're short one tonight. So it's defeated. Thank you. Now back to the main question, which is, thank you for doing that for me. The main recommendation on the capital budget, and I think I'm going to make a comment on that. I mean, we got to this after that February the 4th meeting where we had a whole lots of votes and asks which projects would proceed and which wouldn't. We went around this table and we got to that point, and I really admire staff for bringing this report together. I think it's very comprehensive and really what council or committee said on February the 4th. And so I think it's you know, there's my comments, and we'll take some comments or questions to this recommendation. Councillor Rich. I have another comment later. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I thought you were going to give another comment now. I'm kind of in line with Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, and I'm also concerned that there are 8 of us here instead of the full council. I would like to see this, if it's possible, deferred, if it's possible to defer it even one council session so that everyone has an opportunity to speak to it and vote on it. Is that right? Am I misinterpreting what's going on here?
I mean, if you want to defer that, then we need a motion to defer.
I really think, I don't know if that's the appropriate way to go about this. Like I said numerous times, I'm learning my way through this.
My other comment would be, I mean, we've had some pretty extensive meetings on these, and at some point, I think you got to come here prepared to make decisions. And there is lots of benefit to get your capital projects out early, so that you get good prices and tenders. That's invariably how we make those savings. You're out there early. When you delay this when contractors are already signed up from other municipalities, they take these projects and you pay for them substantially more because they're already busy. And so that's my comment to that. And I was going to say that before, but I'll go to you, Councillor Grace.
Thank you. I have a question about the new lights at the town hall. Where would that money come from?
Sorry, go ahead.
Funding hasn't currently been identified, so you have the same scenario as you have with...
Sorry, that would be added on to...
It would be an additional add-on if you wanted to go ahead with that in addition to the capital budget that's been presented.
And similarly, possible equipment for the pool repair?
The original plan with the Dryatron was that project would be debentured. My expectation would be, given the size of that project, if you were to take that on, it would be debentured as well.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, if we're discussing the new potential fix for the Dryatron, the cost would be substantially cheaper than what the budget number was, and a debenture would not likely be required. Staff are still investigating the merits of that, and we are proposing a budget amendment. Frankly, if the budget is adopted in at this meeting or the next meeting, we see that coming back in April as a budget change. And we're not anticipating a debenture given the potential cost of it that we know as of today.
Thank you. I have a question for Kate that I'm sure I knew the answer, but I've forgotten it. There's coming up 2016 through 2019, there's massive amounts of money related to financial plans in sewer and water. What is that? Just what's the title of that?
Those values are based on the annual investments required in the financial plans that Council adopted back in 2012 or 13 as part of the water permit. So we'll be redoing those again next year to define those numbers a little better.
So they're actually for capital projects. They're not just a plan.
Correct. So the water financial plan is mandated that we have to do that every year or every 5 years, and those numbers come directly out of that, the investment required to maintain our water system.
And Kate, what do we spend? Where does the West Stereo rebate go? Have we, is there any possibility, because we do have a street light item in here, lighting at the town hall, certainly behind the town hall, it's a street light, but it could be a decorative street light. Is there not some way to have it be part of a street light budget? But the Westerio rebate,
I think you're referring to the dividend that we receive annually from we receive a dividend that goes into operations.
Well, also it has to do with we know from Ontario Hydro what we've been getting back, and certainly we've been paying Westerio, but there's a sense that there should be a rebate because of what we've done. Is that come through yet?
I think Stuart can answer that. I think what you're talking to is a rebate that we are using to finance the $1 million debenture to convert those lights to LEDs. That was the plan, so that whatever savings that we would receive from it's to really finance the installation of those lights.
And just one more. I find it confusing now the way that the budget's presented, that even with the debt charts that we've got, there's harbor numbers in there in various places. Can you assure me that where there's a harbor item coming from reserved or carried over, that is still part of a complete harbor budget, and it's not now being sort of put in a different place, that it's become part of the general budget for the community, because they are supposed to be standalone items, and it just the numbers are showing up differently. And is it still all intact in harbor, and it's coming from harbor reserves? It's not just transferring over to other reserve funds.
I can confirm that there have been no changes to where the funding's coming from. If you looked at the harbor operating budget that we saw in February, there was an amount going into reserves of $40,000, and it's those funds that will be funding the harbor capital.
Councillor Menage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You make an interesting proposition that we ought to move on and save some money by approving the capital budget tonight. So then I would ask you if you're also willing to look at some interim, and I heard our CEO say that we could do that. We may have a budget adjustment meeting. So if it's obvious that our Director of Public Works is going to save some money, and we've heard from the Chief Financial Officer last year that there was a large amount of growth in the community, which resulted in approximately $300,000 in additional tax revenue in 2014. If a similar occurrence, in fact, I would like to ask the Chief Financial Officer if we know that and the building permit process is going to open up in the spring, if we sense that there's going to be additional monies coming, then could we not have a budget adjustment meeting in May or June and return to Councillor Matheson's proposal and return to some other proposals and have another discussion then?
Absolutely, we can do that at any time, Neil. The one other thing I will comment, though, and I think was kind of that the Chief Director of Finance said that we haven't got the final numbers yet, so we don't know. There's potentially a deficit there that we don't even know about yet, all know about, right? And so it could be either way. So I'm not saying right now, I'm not going to put you on the spot on that right now, Kate. I appreciate it. But by all means, Neil, when we go through this, and I think that's one of the ways how we did the other extension on Waterloo Street last year, was we got to a point where we tendered early, got good prices, and the project come well under prices, and we did a budget adjustment to add a project. So we do that fairly routinely when we find these things out. And maybe I'm getting too close to the mic. So, Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. I guess it's for Stuart. It's on the Schedule B, the Adelaide Street Emerald intersection improvement indicates that it's complete. I don't have a page number here, but it's so I was wondering, it looks like there's still work to be done there.
Yeah, sorry, that is a mistake on my part. Oh. So it is not complete. There's still some top course asphalt and some lights to put up yet.
Okay. And will there be lights put up by the developers on that property, the car wash and Subway as well?
They've done a lighting design on that we've approved, and also I think there's 4 or 5 streetlights to put up on Adelaide Street as well.
Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
There's actually a couple of projects on the list that I don't believe are complete yet, so it might be good to just take a look at it again. But on the reserve list that you gave us, the Westerio Reserve has completely been left off the list. We still have that $7.6 million, right?
Yeah, sorry, I tried to make this report consistent with the report that Lori had presented last year, the former Director of Finance, and she did not include that. That's more of an equity than a reserve, so I took it off this time as well.
Go ahead, Councillor Mike Myatt.
I just have one quick question for our CIO, if I could. I see that our increase to our dedicated levy increase is 0.75% roughly to capital. We've been trying to attain a 1% additional contribution to capital each year. So our contribution this year is $76,769. I rather like the 1% annual contribution. Why was it reduced to 0.73? Was it to lower the tax levy? What was the reason?
That's the long and short of it. There are a number of adjustments made at the February 4th meeting that impacted the capital and operating budgets by council, and a number of projects disappeared.
Number of projects, and really what you have here before us, Mike, was a result of all of those votes and those discussions. So, Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Here's the thing. We haven't added anything significant to the community. Like we're certainly doing roads and stuff, but I hate to see a big tax increase without offering really something to the taxpayer back that's visible. So I'm hoping that the overall tax increase is going to be around inflation, because I think that it's reasonable to keep up with inflation as we increase taxes. But it's difficult for me to figure out what our overall tax increase is going to be without the operational idea as well. Can you give me a prediction?
We do note here that we're sitting at 3.86% as the overall increase, and that's staff have not made any other changes beyond what was decided and voted on at the February 4th meeting. So if everything were to stay as it is presented tonight and as it was presented that day, we would be at 3.86%.
For capital, but the overall budget with operations and everything, at one point you had us down around 3%, I believe, at the end of the last meeting, taking into consideration school board taxes, and then that's a third. Maybe explain that to me, because I'm probably
certainly.
Call it properly.
So the 3.86 is the combined operating and budget just for the municipality. Once we combine that with the county and the school, we represent about 60% of the total tax bill that taxpayers receive. 20% on top of that would be the county levy, and another 20% for the school. So the combined increase with a municipal increase of 3.86% is sitting right now at 3.09%.
Councillor Minaj.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask and comment that in the operating budget, we left staff with a list of about a dozen items to cost out. Increased levels of service, picking up some leaves, adding some sidewalk snow plowing. There was a list. And so we're expecting that staff report to say cost estimates of those, and then we might pick some of those off and say we want to add them to the operating budget. So the operating budget number could change. I just wanted to make that clear.
Going to have the same discussion for operating budget, yes, in 2 weeks. So the Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, sorry.
Okay, I too wonder why it's not 1%. One of the items that's disappeared is $6,000. It's a small amount, but $6,000 for park signs. And then later on our agenda, we have an agenda item that would require signage. And so, we're losing it here, and then, we're already talking about doing something that would require signage, which has to be paid for from somewhere. So there's going to be some interesting conversations over the next little while, but I am surprised we're not being given options that bring it up to the 1%, because that made sense to me. Thank you.
I disagree with you. We had those options on February the 4th. We voted on all those, and we've got to this point. So, if you want to change it, by all means, and add to it, make an amendment, but those were voted on here, all of those projects, and this is what we've got. If you want to change that, by all means, go ahead, make an amendment. But I think they didn't disappear. They disappeared because some people put their hands up and some people didn't that day. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I would make an amendment then that we put back in the budget the $6,000 that was there for park signs. Our bylaws are not enforceable unless there's signage. And we removed a whole pile of signs from waterfront areas last year that need to in some way be replaced, that have to do with bicycles and dogs, and we haven't given ourselves any wiggle room in the budget to provide those signs. So I would move that we put $6,000 back in the budget for park signs.
And where would you like it funded from?
From the tax levy.
6,000 more to the levy. A seconder for that motion? Mike, you're seconding? Okay, all in favor? That carries. So 6,000 goes in. Back to the main question now. We've had enough discussion on the main question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. The next item that is a general government staff report. It has to do with council committee structure for 2015 and 2016, and our CAO will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A visioning session was held with members of council and the CAO on January the 31st. It was facilitated as indicated. Included on the agenda were sessions related to project priority setting for the upcoming term and beyond, council staff interactions, communications with the public, committee structure, and the procedural bylaw. A session summary was prepared by the facilitators and attached to the staff report. It summarizes outcomes and potential next steps. In addition to the provision of this report, staff will be following up on a number of the other items noted, and council can expect individual staff reports on the procedural bylaw and the proposed priority matrix for projects in the near future. Based on the review and discussion on the current advisory and ad hoc committee structure that occurred, staff has outlined in this report a series of recommendations and prepared draft terms of reference for each proposed committee for your consideration. We point out that the creation of the structure and responsibilities assigned to a committee of council is entirely discretionary on your part. Staff believe the attached draft mandates addresses the issues generally discussed during the session. We've attached an updated one-page summary showing the entire committee board structure, incorporating the proposed configuration. We do point out, however, that an alternative to the discussion that took place at the session concerning the potential creation of an ad hoc committee in 2016 to oversee the preparation of a recreation master plan would be to simply add those related tasks to the proposed Recreation and Active Transportation Committee's current proposed mandate as part of consideration of that item tonight, and that would eliminate the need for that next committee to be added in 2016. Mr. Mayor, if the structure that is proposed here tonight is adopted by council, we would place advertisements soliciting applications for the additional committees in the future, and the striking committee would go through the process of making recommendations with respect to membership. And we would also proceed with the additional admin support that I'll get to in a second with that we would need to maintain the functionality of the entire committee structure. So the financial impact is particularly significant from staff's point of view in this regard. Here we want to point out clearly that the entire corporate council and committee structure proposed can't be supported with the existing staff resources we have. There are two aspects of this issue, with the need to engage some additional part-time admin support to assist each of the staff members responsible for the direct support to these various committees being the most straightforward. We advise that each meeting of each committee generates the need to research materials, prepare and publish agendas, coordinate meeting times and dates and locations, attend usually after working hours to record proceedings and to do the follow-up, including report writing, follow-up on internal and external communications, archiving, indexing, and so on. It's based on it's clear based on existing departmental workloads and the conversations that we've had just a few minutes ago about being spread somewhat thinly that we can't affect this based on the existing staff complement devoted to and trained in these functions. So that's essentially the main issue. It is therefore recommended by us collectively that a part-time resources be added to the overall administrative staff complement whose task will be the support activities for these committees. And based on what we estimate at the moment, that is an additional annual obligation of about $25,000 that does impact your operating budget discussion, which is one of the large parts why you do not have a complete operating budget package here tonight. The more substantive concern that we want to also clearly raise at this time is the likelihood that there will be expectations of these committees that projects, tasks, and activities will be carried out requiring more than just that core administrative support that we note. With the limited previous success we've had in adding full-time staff resources in departments already tasked to deliver core services, there's a concern that there will be an inherent inability to provide the level of assistance to meet the committee's minimum expectations. Although the number of actual hours worked by key senior staff weekly to support the organization and alternatives necessary to address the cumulative impact that has over the long term is subject to the consideration and the update to the organizational review that we've slated in the budget to occur this year, there's also a need to identify for Council at this time that the extent of the progress the committees may wish to make will be inhibited by the current organizational constraints that exist at levels higher than that admin support that we're also seeking. And touching briefly with respect to the Waterfront Master Plan specifically, the removal of the proposed current year funding for Phase 1A of the project will constrain the ability of staff and the ad hoc committee that's proposed herein to conduct activities related to refining the capital cost of the aspects of the project, refine the concept created by the consultant, and propose alternatives for future council consideration. It may be necessary to approach council mid-year and request either additional support resources or some professional expertise depending on how that committee, if it's created, and staff move towards implementation of the work plan.
Thank you,
There's a
Nick.
long series of recommendations there.
I'll read the recommendations. The recommendation is that the mandate for the Economic Development Advisory Committee, combining the former responsibilities of the Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee with broader economic development functions as attached to this report, be approved. 2, that the mandate for the Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee, incorporating aspects of the former Parks and Trails Advisory Committee with broader active transportation functions attached to this report, be approved. That the mandate for the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee, tasked with implementation of the Waterfront Master Plan, attached to this report, be approved. That the mandate for the Striking Committee, attached to this report, be approved. That $25,000 be added to the draft operating budget to adequately fund the part-time administrative support necessary to implement Council's desired committee structure. That the creation of a Recreation Master Plan Ad Hoc Committee charged with the responsibility of assisting staff with the preparation of an updated Recreation Master Plan be considered in conjunction with the funding for this project currently proposed in 2016. That the senior staff be advised to begin dialogue with the County of Bruce officials to review the existing planning services delegation agreement to ensure a smooth transition for the restructuring of the current role and responsibility of the Planning Advisory Committee to shift responsibilities for the local official plan, local official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, draft plans of subdivision, and draft plans of condominium to Council at the end of 2016. And finally, that the advertisements be placed soliciting public applications for the additional committees, and the Striking Committee be requested to report back with future recommendations for the membership. Councillor Rage.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Now, when you were talking about that, Larry, did you say that you were interested in Part 6 up to Part 2, or did I mishear you? You said down a little further, it says an alternative discussion took place at the visioning session concerning the potential creation. I must have misunderstood what you said. Go ahead.
The alternative staff are suggesting, as opposed to creating another committee to do the Recreation Master Plan in 2016, is to add those tasks to the committee proposed in Section 2, yes. So merge the two together, create the committee now, task it with preparing the terms of reference as the director suggests, and then consider funding the project in 2016 as we currently suggest.
So just go through the same process, only with instead of an ad hoc committee, to do it in a general committee. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Larry for this. This is important. This is change. You're supporting change by bringing it forward. And I believe this is the kind of change that we heard on the streets when we were looking to get elected. And this is the beginning of something big. To me, this is engaging the public in more opportunities, and we can certainly use their help. I would ask. I'm misunderstanding that I thought the role of the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee had come to a close, the old committee, and that the future committee would have been an advisory committee on what to implement from the master plan, and that they would advise council that, with some council participation, that the following project should move ahead. So I'm not understanding why it's now being referred to as an ad hoc instead of an advisory. Maybe you can clarify that for me. Thank you.
I think from staff's point of view, we contemplated it not necessarily lasting the entire term of council. I think that the work that it would do would be to establish the priorities, refine the projects, make the recommendations to council as to what those project priorities might be. And I think, frankly, the director and I saw it kind of waning is the wrong word, but not necessarily sustaining itself over a 4-year period. I can say with some confidence we anticipate it being here for 15 and 16. We just aren't sure whether it would continue after council reviews midterm.
Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too applaud the initiative, which is good moving forward. I would have expected, though, that we might have seen this in a draft opportunity and been able to contribute prior to it showing up here as a complete document for approval. In the sense that certainly, I have comments about each of the committees. For example, with the Economic Development Advisory Committee, the committee composition includes members from the BIAs, both BIAs and the Chamber, and then 2 business people at large appointed by council. There's no definition of what defines business. I would rather that just be 2 members of the public. Business people are picked up in the other categories, and it's missing an opportunity there. I do note also in the recreation and active transportation mandate that's mentioned, there is no specific indication of a staff support person in terms of who that is. I think that's should be there. I also, though, would enhance this committee's responsibilities to have them provide input to site plan development and reviews in much the same way that the Accessibility Committee does. It's about time we let this aspect of the community be at the table when we're talking about shaping the community. Public Works is there already. Accessibility is there. This committee needs to have a role, I believe, in reviewing site plans. That just makes sense to me. That would be a good step forward for us. And then the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee, the one thing that jumped out immediately at me that is very, very distinct from what we've already done with the waterfront is it's got a committee responsibility in here, policies governing waterfront operations, including the Port Elgin and the Southampton Harbor operations. We didn't include any of that in the waterfront master plan because they were completely left out. And the harbor activities, it's my understanding that we've got something built into the budget this year about a business plan or some kind of management plan for the Port Elgin harbor situation. So I'm finding it a little curious that that's kind of in there because the harbors are totally distinct from the waterfront in that they are operated differently and they both have something to do with the feds. And in fact, we operate them as business enterprises. So I would respectfully, request that they be removed from there. But I do applaud the whole initiative. I guess I just would have liked to have had the chance for us to see it and to contribute some comments before it appeared as a finished document. So in particular, I feel strongly that members of the public for the Economic Development Advisory Committee should not be limited to business people, and that we enable the Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee to be given the chance to review site plans, just like we do with the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And certainly I'm not too sure, maybe Larry can comment on why the harbor stuff is in there. They weren't part of the waterfront master plan, so if this group is charged with implementation of the recommendations of the waterfront master plan, there's nothing in there for the harbors because it wasn't part of the master plan. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Larry, first of all, I have a question about the additional $25,000 for staffing. Two of the committees that we previously had active are now being changed to be included there. We're bringing back the waterfront committee. How would you envision this $25,000 per time, or would we be hiring someone new?
The current contemplation is to, I believe, add on a part-time basis additional support person. I think what we want to do over the next year or two is look at strategic opportunities to perhaps, with some succession planning that we know is coming, refine it. But what I think staff are clearly saying to you today, that with the existing skills we have in the organization and existing pressures, it can't be accommodated with existing resources. We do have a commitment to look at how we can do it more efficiently over the coming couple of years.
Hey, my second question is with regard to the striking committee mandate. Committee responsibilities include conducting an annual performance appraisal of the officer. I'm certainly in favor of including this as something that we should be bringing on board, but I believe that this is something that all of council should have some say about before we include that as a fait accompli, as an addition to the. So I'd like to see us have a discussion about what the possible options are for that kind of appraisal, and do we agree as a council that we'll give that over to us?
To respond, typically there would be input, certainly from all members of council in that process. I think what you don't want to have is a quorum of council conducting that exercise. It becomes a meeting. And so I think there's lots of opportunities to devise a process. I think the delivery agent in this case is what we're recommending is the striking committee be responsible for the actual interaction. That doesn't mean that council is excluded from the overall process.
Okay, it wasn't clear to me from the statement in there. Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Further to the question then about the striking committee, am I reading this to understand that the responsibility that's there that says making recommendations to council on mandates and objectives of other committees of council would be better said of potential additional committees of council, so that they would be the vetting group that would perhaps bring this document forward in the future? Am I understanding that correctly? I have another comment too.
Yes.
Okay. And just for the record, Larry, I realize and I appreciate and respect your comment about the resources available. Correct me if I'm wrong, do we not have over 100 municipal staff people at this point?
We're in that vicinity full-time and significantly more than that part-time.
And we really don't believe that within that staff complement, one of these committees is once every 2 months, and another one is, we really don't believe that we have some resources that would benefit from the opportunity to participate in these exercises. And, with respect, that's a lot of people that we already have here. Really, we can't manage that?
Senior management team spent about an hour on that very subject last Wednesday, and I think I tried to answer that question as directly as I could by saying at the existing time, with the existing resources we have, In the absence of some succession planning that will occur over the next year or two, we do not have the capacity today.
Is there any, Councillor Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is to our CAO. We may not have the capacity today. What's the difference between now and 2016?
Succession planning.
You said your succession planning is 1 to 2 years in priority. So we put off the recreation master plan from this year because we're too overloaded, too taxed. We may not be able to put it in 2016 because we may not have our succession planning in place by that point. Correct?
I believe we're talking somewhat apples and oranges here. The issue with respect to committee support and succession planning, I think, is different from the slate of projects that the senior staff have already on their plate from this previous year that are unfinished that we've talked about and what's on the slate for 2015. So there's two aspects to that, Councillor. So what we have said is we were planning on doing the Recreation Master Plan in 2016. We still believe that fits in our work program. And what we were trying to propose is through creation of those tasks with that other committee, a chance to at least move forward with the terms of reference this year so that we're well positioned to do it next calendar year.
So, correct me, I'm a little lost here. Are we creating a Recreation Master Plan ad hoc committee this year?
The alternative in the staff report we've suggested is that the mandate for the Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee be amended by Council, if it so chooses, to add those tasks to it, as opposed to creating a separate ad hoc committee. So you begin the committee work this year.
Okay. Councillor Rich.
Is that the amendment that you just brought forward? Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, I just have the amendment because I'm just talking about.
I'm sorry.
I was going to bring forward the amendment, but you just threw it up there, so I assume that's what you're doing.
I have put two amendments forward with Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, and they're speaking to two earlier points. I don't know that they're speaking to this point.
I'll take this one. It's been moved by Council. This is an amendment to this recommendation that to amend the staff report, Council Committee Structure 2015-16 to say Economic Development Committee would include 2 members of the public and delete 2 business people. And further, to amend the staff report to indicate site plan reviews as a responsibility of the Recreation and Active Transportation Committee. And I think we need to speak to that one, yeah. As I want to be clear on responsibility. I think there's no trouble circulating them for their comments, but approval of those rests here at this committee, and I would not want to see that delegated to any other committee. You said review as a responsibility. So I'm not saying, I just want to be clear about what the intentions are, because I don't think that is ever the intent, at least in my intent. Can you vote on these separately? So we'll do the first one, the staff report, Council Committee 2015, the Economic Development Committee. It says would include 2 members of the public and delete 2 business people. All in favor of that? That's carried. The next is to amend the staff report to indicate site plan reviews as a responsibility of the Recreation and Active Transportation Committee. All in favor of that? Sorry. Yeah, you go ahead first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Director of Community Services is regularly involved in the site plan review process through our internal review team at the moment. And I think in terms of engaging, she brings typically the issues that relate to transportation, active park development, and so on that are found in our official plan. And I want to point out that the review by the Accessibility Committee is mandated, and so there's a difference between allowing a separate committee of council to review and comment on, which might be fine if that's where council wants to go, but it involves time and process that may in fact slow things down to some degree. So I just want to raise those flags so you're aware.
I'll go back then to ask the question on the second amendment, which is to amend staff report to indicate site plan reviews as a responsibility of the Recreation and Active Transportation Committee. All in favor? Opposed? That carries, and it was 5-3, correct? So the next one then is moved by Councillor Minaj, seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert, that to amend staff report of Council Committee Structure 2015-16 to remove from the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee responsibilities all references to two operated harbors. Again, sure.
If the mandate of the committee relates to the waterfront master plan, there was nothing in there related to the harbors. So that just makes sense.
Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee strictly for the implementation of the Waterfront Master Plan? I thought I read a lot of other items in there. Is it pertaining to just the implementation of the Waterfront Master Plan?
Terms of reference are there, I think, Mike, if you want to read. You want to comment? Dean?
It's dealing with the 18 kilometers of waterfront in Saugeen. Part of that is harbors. The other advisory committee that we suggested identifies all other aspects and services. What it doesn't identify is the harbors, and we certainly know that there's a tremendous amount of interest, community interest, not just by our patrons at the harbor, but by the greater community as a whole. And providing the waterfront with an opportunity for community consultation throughout the process, planning process annually, it gives it a voice, which typically we have. It made sense that it was part of this process as well.
Okay. Oh.
I'm sorry, the first two items on the mandate and the mission statement, waterfront master plan, is the reason for this. There is already, it's my understanding, a group of people that are sort of a harbor group. Is this usurping that? And there was the waterfront master plan, the harbor was left out of it purposely.
You are correct. There's certainly aspects, though, that as we encountered throughout the waterfront master plan, that overrode into both aspects of it. So we know that our harbor users use the
Councillor Minaj, one more comment, then we'll call the question.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Jane. This too is disturbing to me. We had a long discussion during the 2.5 years that we were in place as I was a member of the public, and we wanted so bad to add the harbors and discuss the harbors. We felt that they couldn't. And your argument at the time was the exact opposite. I recall that said that the harbors needed a special, separate attention, and that one day we would get there where we would merge the two, but that we weren't ready. And I don't believe we're ready now. So that's why the amendment is in front of you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So to be clear, what you're asking here is to remove from the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee responsibilities for the two operated harbors. Okay.
Mayor, so at that point, we're really the main focus with the mandate and the mission statement is the implementation of the Waterfront Master Plan. Well, let's stay focused, is my...
Sure. All in favor of the recommendation, the amendment? All in favor? Let's count. Is everybody clear what we're doing here? So the amendment I'll read the amendment again. To amend the staff report, Council Committee Structure 2015-2016 to remove from the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee responsibilities all references to the two operated harbors. Go ahead.
I know there's been a lot of discussion. I should probably be better versed, but then whose responsibility is the harbor?
Community Services.
Community Services.
Community Services and the Harbor Master. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask then, all in favor of this amendment? Opposed? That's carried. The next amendment then is to amend the report to indicate that the deputy mayor could chair the striking committee in the absence of the mayor. I don't think we need much discussion on this. All in favor of this? Opposed? That's carried. So, any other changes? Yeah, we're back to the main motion now, and I think we've had lots of... Go ahead.
Well, I've got an amendment that I'd like to follow the recommendation of staff to move the ad hoc committee up to follow that recommendation.
We have another amendment. Then it's moved by Councillor Risch and second by Councillor Mathen. Moved that Part 5, VI, 6. The Recreation Master Plan of the staff report be included as part of the Part 2 Recreation and Active Transportation Advisory Committee. So to be clear, really what you're saying is, given the what we talked about, is given responsibility for drafting or working with the Recreation Master Plan to this committee. That's great. Okay.
Do the terms of reference as recommended by staff.
Okay, any discussion on this motion then? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Back to the main question, the main recommendation. I think we've had lots of discussion on this, and I think we're ready for the question. All in favor of the main recommendation? That's carried. We'll take a break when we're done here. We've got to get this done. We typically take a break after, and if you want the floor, Neil, please put your hand up. Next item is the staff report to do with the review process for the previous pool studies, and our CAO will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to the resolution passed by Council on January the 26th, the staff have met to consider the most cost-effective and expedient process to review and update the current pool-related material with a view to providing a recommendation on the future of aquatics and Saugeen Shores within the timeline specified in the motion. The process recommended by us jointly essentially contains the following elements: creating a working group led by staff, including myself, the Director of Community Services, our Chief Building Official, and our Aquatics Supervisor to manage the review and update process. Directly reaching out to the community to request the assistance of a limited number of citizen representatives, and we're thinking 4 to 5, that would have a cross-section of viewpoints to assist the staff working group in this project. Our Director of Community Services has kind of reached back and is assembling a list of potential candidates in this regard if this approach is approved by Council. We would coordinate activities with elected officials appointed to the group if Council wishes some direct involvement in the review process. And we would directly engage the third-party professional expertise that we have identified in this report to assist staff with updating all of the data contained in the previous documentation, synthesizing the information, and producing a review of the best course of action, taking capital, operating, and debt capacity factors into consideration. We produce a staff report, including the supporting material prepared by the professional firm on the best course of action, and you'll see by the work plan that's been attached by the firm that that could be accomplished in June or July 2015 as contemplated by Council in the resolution. So we have attached to the report the scope that MHPM project managers proposes, and it identifies what they would do essentially, and what they are saying is that they would prepare a letter report dealing with existing information only. This is not an exercise in reinventing the wheel or doing new consultant studies. It's to work with existing data and current realities to synthesize the information, which I believe is what the goal of Council was when the motion was considered. In order to do that, we require $15,000 in funding to cover the work, and we point out that as a result of the removal of the funding for the Centennial Pool project. We don't have a funding source, so again, regrettably, we're saying this means an additional impact on your operating budget in the amount that's indicated prior to final approval.
I'll read the recommendation first, Mike.
Thank you.
It's the recommendation that the proposed process outlined herein to produce a recommendation to council on the future of aquatics in Saugeen Shores be endorsed. The council identifies 2 elected officials to assist the proposed working group in updating the existing documentation. And 3, that the $15,000 for this purpose be added to the 2015 operating budget prior to final adoption to fund the professional fees to be incurred by the outside resources required to implement the directives contained in the January 26 council motion. Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CEO, Larry, may I ask you, at the end of the day, when this report has been completed, will it steer, once and for all, steer us in the right direction? Maybe steering isn't the right word. Direct us? Will there be a recommendation along the lines of, should we be renovating at the pool at the existing site? Should we be building a new facility attached to the community complex? I understand they'll be updating user numbers over the last from 5, 6, 7 years ago to today. Will there be the information available to made available to council for us to make an informed decision at that point?
The goal through the number of conversations that we've had with the firm is to do that. Yes, make the unbiased professional recommendation. It may not be the recommendation council wants to hear from a political point of view, and it obviously would not address the question of whether you want to continue the aquatics program at all, because obviously closing the pool and discontinuing aquatics is always a recommendation or an option council would have. But yes, it would take the previous work, synthesize, and and the goal is to produce one course of action.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Councillor Grace first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Larry, what other firms, if any, did you consider as well as this firm?
None.
Can you tell us why you chose this firm?
I have got lots of experience working with this firm in previous organizations.
I just I came across an article indicating some problems with their Blue Nose 2 renovation project. So I just, I know this isn't a whole renovation project, but I just wondered if we had any other.
If council wants to do this in the timelines that's indicated, the notion of conducting an RFP for firms for a scope of work this small added time from my perspective, and that didn't seem to be the goal of council.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Just as an additional comment, they were involved in the last phase 3, which was pretty much a review and consolidation of all of the material that had been done up till then. I appreciate what Larry just said, because I was asked to make the comment that it's, the options are mentioned as renewal or replacement. Decommissioning is also an option, so I was asked to make that comment. I also wanted to note that their comments, so the consultants' comments, talk about consulting, or how do they word it here? Meet with a working group, and it's got representatives of the pool users. Then in the staff report, it says citizen representatives. There is a sense that we are going to encourage them to talk to taxpayers who maybe are not pool users, just to balance things out, because certainly there's a difference to talk to people who use the pool or to make it so that you've got some of both. And so that's encouraged, right?
The staff report indicates a cross-section of viewpoints specifically for that reason.
We've got, any further comments? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Larry, what do you think this is going to give us that we don't have already?
The last time this was before council in a comprehensive way, I think there was 8 options on the floor. I think what this is going to give you is one that you can debate, along with the notion of not continuing aquatics.
Okay. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any, that's carried. We're at 10 o'clock and our procedural bylaw says that we need a motion, or we should be starting council, and we're not anywhere near there yet, so we need a motion to extend committee of the whole.
I move that we extend committee of the whole.
Okay, Councillor Dave Myatt, Councillor Mike Myatt, all in favor? That's carried. Oh, it's your turn, Linda. The next item on the agenda is a staff report that has to do with amend the dog bylaw 36-2004, and Clerk Linda White will present.
Thank you. The Port Algon and Saugeen Beaches Organization and the Southampton Residents Association have recently requested Council to consider changes to the animal control bylaw to clarify whether dogs are allowed to be walked on the sidewalk and promenades along the beaches. During their presentations, the deputation seemed to indicate that there is support for an amendment to permit dogs to be allowed on the sidewalk and promenade, provided the dogs are leashed. The attached amendment to the Animal Control Bylaw defines the public beach as being the beach area from the edge of the water easterly to the limit of the private property, save and except for the sidewalk, promenade, and parking areas. Dogs must be leashed and under the care and control of the person at all times. The leash cannot be of such a length so as to allow the dog to enter onto the beach or interfere with a pedestrian. Once the amendment is approved by Council, staff can erect the necessary signage along the sidewalk and promenade. The financial impact is the cost to install the signage is included in the operating budget.
Thank you, Linda. Then the recommendation is that Council consider an amendment to bylaw 36-2004, being the animal control bylaw, to allow leashed dogs to be walked on sidewalks and promenades located within the public beach areas. Questions or comments? And we'll start over here to Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think this is a really good first step towards clearing up the situation with dogs on leashes on beach sidewalks, promenades, so on and so forth. I did hear a presentation from David Schemmel from the Port Algon Saugeen Beach Association in January, and he on behalf of the Port Algon Saugeen Beach Association offered their volunteer services to actually review our current dog bylaw and make suggestions, recommendations as a volunteer organization to bring forward to staff. And we did receive a letter today from who's the president of the Port Algon Saugeen Beach Association, and I just wanted to read what he had said. In my deputation to Council on Monday, January 26th, the Beach Association asked Council for its permission to take a leading role in making recommendations to update the current dog bylaw. So, whereas I support the good work staff have done with updating the bylaw, I just don't think it perhaps gone far enough. I think there was some question with the Port Algon Saugeen Beaches as well as the Southampton Residents Association talking about perhaps permitted hours to walk dogs on the beach. For example, would 6 in the morning to 9 in the morning be a permitted use to walk your dog on the beach in designated areas? So I think what the Beachers Association were suggesting was they wanted to help with the review and make recommendations, suggestions that may enhance our bylaw, Mr. Mayor. So if I could I will be supporting this, but if I can make that, I don't know how we make that suggestion or recommendation, but I would like to have staff revisit this and consider involving Port Algon and Saugeen Beaches Association, and as well as the Southampton Residents Association, if I could.
Sure, I think we can. I'll tell you, this issue is seldom there's unanimity. Anyways, I'm not going to talk to that point. We can circulate that, Mike. We can circulate the bylaw to both those associations and ask them for the input, and we can get that back. And if we want to reconsider it again, okay, Councillor Rich.
My only concern with this, and I'd be supportive of allowing leash dogs on, I see that there could be a loophole with regard to picking up after your dog. I would want to make sure that if there is an amendment to the bylaw, that it ensures that dog owners are, by law, forced to pick up after their dogs.
That is a clause that's existing in the current bylaw, and it is enforceable.
I was only concerned if the dogs aren't allowed on the beach and then it is enforceable where they are allowed and then you change where they're allowed, that perhaps that there could be a loophole in the bylaw, that's all.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I am concerned about, possible hours as a compromise, restriction of hours, and the issue of the stoop and scoop concern have been addressed. But I also wondered, is it possible or should we be requiring a provision for service animals? Just did the accessibility training last week and learned that a boa constrictor can be classified and is classified in Ontario as a service animal. So I'm wondering if we should add something like that because there might be some kind of negative public reaction to seeing a boa constrictor on the beach. Thank you.
On the whole dog thing, a lot of people know my thoughts about that. I'm a dog person, but I would move that we defer this to a later date to allow more consultation and to allow further amendments because this is it's a big issue, and I think there's a lot of good ideas that we need to include. So I move that we defer it.
Maybe that's second that. Okay, so maybe so that if there's some support to that, I think we can end this discussion now and defer this. And Councillor Minaj.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I would like to do is to remind everyone that for 2.5 years, the Waterfront Ad Hoc Committee spoke to the public at length to discuss items of dogs on the beach. And there is a comprehensive section in the Waterfront Master Plan that speaks to dog beach areas where they would be able to actually let their dogs off the leash, and recommended times and usages similar to what is already being discussed. So any further discussion on it, and if we're going to defer it, I certainly hope we go back to the clauses that are written into the Waterfront Master Plan.
Okay, so all in favor of deferring this? Opposed, if any? Thank you. That's carried. The next item then is cemetery fees, and I'll have to go back. Stuart, you're going to present. Sorry.
Thank you. Briefly, we were audited by the Ministry of Government and Community Services to ensure compliance with the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act. So based on the audit results, we've had to update the cemetery price list to include the information that is on the attachment, and also to split up the pricing as it's indicated now. So in brief, that's what we're looking for.
It's recommended that the Council amend Bylaw 96-2014 to include the updated cemetery fee structure and remove the current fees for the cemetery. Any discussion? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you. I've just never had a chance to ask this question, Stuart. The category that's called monument care and maintenance, that's anywhere from $56 to $226. What service do we provide for that?
We cut the lawn, we trim the lawn, we rake the leaves, we keep the trees cut, we maintain the cemetery.
Excuse me, how is that different then from the lot price care and maintenance?
It is.
It's all sort of together?
It's together. It's an additional service as you have an additional item there.
Any further questions? All in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. Number of, where am I here? First one. The next item then is a staff report on Waterloo, Catherine, and Stafford Streets reconstruction, and I believe it'll be Stuart presenting. Go ahead, Stuart.
Thank you. So we tendered the Waterloo Street, Catherine Street, and Stafford Street projects as one to try to find some additional cost savings. These projects all include section of sanitary sewer replacement and services, upgrades to the storm sewer infrastructure, sidewalk upgraded to the municipal standard, curb and gutter, asphalt, signage, and pavement markings. Again, a standard note is that we do close streets when we're working in direct areas so residents know. We have sent specific correspondence to the Saugeen Central School with some upgrades to the intersection at Catherine and Stafford, and I'll bring some recommendations further to at that point on this project. We received 6 tenders as follows, as indicated here, between $787,000 up to $991,000. Project timelines will be confirmed at a later date. However, it's anticipated it will begin as soon as possible in the spring and the substantial completion by the end of June. It's within.
Thank you, Stuart. Then the recommendation is that Doug Wells Construction Limited be awarded the contract for the Waterloo Street, Catherine Street, and Stafford Street reconstruction project, tender number 2015-6320, 5,500 in the amount of $787,410.22, plus applicable HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary tender documents. Any discussion? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When is the proposed completion date of this project?
In the contract, we've asked for substantially complete by the end of June.
Any further questions? Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Stuart, can you just go over that again? During the construction phase, you've already been in the face of children going to school. Is this going to change anything this time because you're moving down 2 blocks? Is this more involving children in the school areas, crossing the construction zone, or you've already dealt with it for the last 2 blocks? Is there a change?
A change in the road profile or a change?
No, just how you would manage the construction project with all of the children that go across Catherine Street. Is that any different than it was at Gustavus Street?
Well, there'll likely be more children at this crossing, and especially since we are working down Catherine and at Stafford as well. So we'll work within the boundaries and work with the school in that as well. So we've also sent that to the school to let them know about the project so we can work with them on that.
All right, thank you.
Any further comments? All in favor? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is the Planning and Development Staff Report, and it has to do with source water protection, and our Manager of Development, Bart Toby, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the attached correspondence from the Drinking Water Source Protection Planning Committee sent to landowners affected by proposed new policies, town presented the information on the proposed impacts of our harbor fuel station in Port Elgin they have had on our municipal intake located near Southampton. Staff have reviewed the information, consulted with staff of the source protection planning region, and had identified serious concerns with the proposed changes to the Drinking Water Source Protection Plan, DWSPP. Our concerns are highlighted herein. The previous draft of the Source Water Protection Plan, Drinking Water Source Protection, began as a recommendation following the Walker inquiry. The focus of the previous draft on the protecting municipal wellheads, i.e. not Saugeen Shores. Some research on municipal intakes was conducted, but no significant risks were identified and no policy was created requiring Saugeen Shores action. Saugeen Shores carried on the operation as per normal basis on this conclusion. The current proposed change to the DWSPP now impacts Saugeen Shores. The proposal includes policies to prohibit and regulate the existing potential future activities within the proximity to our main and backup water intakes. The proposed policies require the preparation of risk management plans for existing and future fuel storage facilities. In so doing, the policy would require enforcement, monitoring, and other administrative activities to be undertaken by Saugeen Shores, which were not expected to do in the previous plan. The town, as an affected landowner and as an implementing authority, has only been provided 1 month to review and assess potential implications of the proposed plans, change for our community analysis and review of threats to wellhead protection area as conducted over many months and years. We should be given the same time as municipalities with wellhead protection areas to efficiently and fairly conduct a review of the proposals, review impacts on the community, and assess the ongoing implications. The intake protection zone has been left out of the first plan and was submitted to the MOE for approval. Up until this point, in this long process, the municipalities like Saugeen Shores were advised that they had no impact arising from the results of the lake-based intake system, and were effectively exempt from the DWSPP and should not be retroactively committed to an overall process at this stage. I'm not going to go, I just want to kind of get those areas, but there are some other things that are going to change, like the likelihood of threat analysis and how they deal with that, economic development, that's going to have a negative impact, and other items. I think I'm going to leave it at there. I don't want to...
Yeah, thanks very much, Bart. I'm sure the council's read that report and hopefully understand what's happening here. The recommendation then is that council endorse the staff prepared letter attached outlining concerns with the changes to the source water protection plan. And I'll take Councillor Huber, or Vice Deputy Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious to know, we get referred to as the affected landowner. Am I incorrect in making the assumption that where the tank is located at the harbor is actually quote-unquote federal land? And I'm just curious to know, is source water protection, does it supersede Environment Canada regulations? In either case, because Environment Canada has, there's regulations about fuel storage systems that, I've been involved in construction projects where we've been doing upgrades all over the province. And I'm just curious, has any of that played a role in this? Because that is federal land.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with it. I think that I admire Bart for raising this. I think there's ample regulations dealing with fuel that we don't need one more piece of paper that's going to say going to protect this. And I think I admire him for bringing this forward. I would make one suggestion too, that we do have a rep that represents us on the board. Well, there's actually two from Saugeen Shores, and our group rep, who is the mayor here in Kinloss, and I would circulate this letter and recommendation to all three of those and ask them for their support at the board. Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any problem with this letter. I just wanted to mention that when I was at the Source Water Protection Plan presentation in Chesley a couple of weeks ago, it did say that there's money available till the end of the year for risk management, since we're expected to have a risk manager set up. And I am hoping that we're going to be concurrently exploring that option, just so we have all our bases covered, even if we disagree with the course of action at this point.
Sure. I think we're going to see where this goes, but we're going to be forced or not forced into it. I admire you. Okay. Any other comments? All in favor of then the recommendation? Okay. So, and again, just to be clear, make sure that the three members, there's two from Saugeen Shores, and they represent different sectors. Now it's former Mayor Mark Kramer, Susan Day, and the Mayor of here in Kinloss, Mitch Toolam, Carolyn Day. Next item on the agenda is a staff report. It has to do with the Southampton BIA lease agreement, and our Director of Community Services will present. Go ahead, Jane.
Thank you. Staff have met with the newly formed Southampton BIA, and they're actively seeking office space somewhere in Southampton. We do have space in the Southampton Town Hall that is currently sitting vacant, and we've met with the Southampton BIA as well as the other tenants in the Southampton Town Hall to provide some space for accommodation for them. We're asking to enter into a 3-year lease agreement, and the Southampton BIA is currently under the understanding, because of current conversations happening with the current tenants, that there could be some flexibility and some movability within the facility itself. It's a great partnership to have the BIA in that facility as well, and bring some additional vitality to it. The only thing I did want to mention, that the agreement indicates that they are required to provide us insurance. That is not the case, as they are a member.
Thank you. Then the recommendation is that Council considers a bylaw to authorize a 3-year lease agreement between the Town of Saugeen Shores and the Southampton BIA to use office space in the Southampton Town Hall. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I will not be supporting this motion. I'm completely in favor of the BIA getting on with their business. I don't think that this report reflects the collaborative approach suggested by a recent meeting that the Director of Community Services and Public Recreation had with both the Chamber and the Art Gallery, which set in motion a sense of how better access could be provided to the Art Gallery side of the operation via High Street, and it would have shifted the Chamber into the space that you've got allocated for the BIA and would have created the meeting room in a slightly different location and would have not basically given exclusive use for 3 years to an entity that really what they're looking for is a meeting room. And I don't think this report reflects that conversation, and I'm disappointed with that. So I would rather see a report that takes into account the collaboration that was talked about and the adjustments to the space, which in my mind sounded like it was good for everybody involved, but that's not picked up by this, so I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Grace.
Mayor, I had a question about the agreement, and I suspect it's just a typo, but under the paragraph that says "now therefore witnesseth," it's referred to as the Chantry Center.
Any further comments? Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm in a bit of confusion here. So what I'm reading says that the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA, everyone was consulted, everyone's happy with $75. They take that room, correct?
We met with all three parties on site. Talked about the use of space and what could be. We're in very preliminary discussions. BIA is looking for a space. This certainly is going to meet their needs. We're under the understanding that the tenant may be shuffled as we continue conversations. BIA's.
Thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Sorry. So just thank you, Mr. Mayor, to clarify. So it's possible that somebody else could use that space at another time?
Not at this point. We still see all three tenants remaining in the building. We just may take a look at how we provide our services to the community out of that building. Right now we've got 1, 2, 3 entrances. Is that the best way to provide a service to the community? Is there one entrance that provides a higher traffic flow? All of those are going to be we're going to be having conversations. And as I indicated, we're in very early conversations with those groups, but they certainly see a need and a place for all of them in the future.
So, any further comments then? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is again, Community Services, Parks and Recreation staff report. It has to do with the Port Elgin Saugeen Beaches Organization, Gobles Grove sign. And again, our Director of Community Services, Jane Jagodowski, will present.
The 2013 Waterfront Master Plan identified the notion of the creation of additional destination area signage to the same one created at the Port Elgin Main Beach, that be considered. At the time that sign was developed, the Port Elgin signage, or the Bruce County signage strategy had not yet been received. They worked in tandem. Staff's been working with the Port Elgin and Saugeen Beaches organization to have a similar sign installed at Gobles Grove. They have met with them a couple of times now and on site and proposed a similar sign to the one at the Port Elgin Main Beach, and that's indicated below. Beaches Alternative has provided an additional sign that they would prefer in its place, and what we're bringing for you tonight to take a look at those designs. Staff is certainly receptive of both designs, and either design and sign would certainly be an added addition to the Gobles Grove area.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendation is that the variation to the entrance signs to Gobles Grove Beach area as proposed by the Port Elgin and Saugeen Beaches Association be approved, and that the cost to supply and install the unit be borne by the group. Any discussion? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Completely in favor of their logo being part of the mix. I actually prefer the colored one at the bottom over the one at the top. Any chance we can still stay with a straight edge at the bottom so that at least there's some conformity to other park and recreation signs throughout the community? I like the logo. I like the extra seagulls in there. I like the removal, quite frankly, of the community of Saugeen Shores. But I just, the straight edge would have it be part of the family better, I think. Is that a possibility?
We can certainly discuss that with them. And if I may just add one more thing, I neglected to say that the municipality will be installing the sign on their behalf. But certainly we can go back and talk with the group about deviations to that sign.
Councillor Minaj.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might understand, but I'm disappointed to think that removing a community of Saugeen Shores is going to happen. As we move forward as a community of Saugeen Shores, I would think that it's important to continue to say that. I realize the logo is there, but continuing the theme seemed to define better what the people were in front of. And I believe, again, if you go into the waterfront master plan, you will see a section on signage and how we should follow through with it.
Councillor Myatt.
Prolong this too long. I just want to thank Jane and members of the Port Elgin Saugeen Beach Association for working together and coming up with a compromise. And I see the Saugeen Shores logo was at the top, which fits in for the most part with their signage strategy. And I also wanted to make mention that I believe that there's also, through you to the Director of Community Services, that I've heard that perhaps there's a flagpole and a flag going in at some point this year. Jane?
The Beaches Association is certainly actively looking at installing a flag down in that vicinity as well to complement the sign.
Any further comments? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Now we have some communication for petitions for the committee of the whole action. We have a letter from a resident on a resident on a 6th concession there. It's really looking for some direction on water. Okay, Councillor Myatt.
Mr. Mayor, I know the $1 million was pulled from our capital budget this year for the provision of trail extension on concession 6 and provision of water supply to those residents in our settlement area. It's a very expensive project for 10 or 11 residents, but it was disappointed that it was removed, but we can't do it all. It's a big project, and I just wanted to say that I'm concerned that one resident I talked to drilled the well 3 times and still can't come up with enough water to take a shower. And that is a problem area from Highway 21 easterly up to the rail trail. So I am very concerned for those residents out there, and I think at some point in time I hope we are able to do something. I have a request to make through you, Mr. Mayor, to our Director of Public Works, Stu, and I was just wondering if we could ask our Director to come back with a report to Council with options, costing, outlining what we can and cannot do. It comes down to dollars. It's lots of money for that project. But I am really, really very much concerned, as we all are, with residents in that area that are having difficulty, finding enough water to run the dishwasher and take a shower. And that is very concerning in one of our settlement areas. So I wonder if I can make that request to the Director of Public Works.
Sure, do you want to comment to that? I think, Stuart, we have some work been done on this, and go ahead.
Yeah, quickly, I did, as it was proposed this year, we had some preliminary pre-engineering work done, and we did do a cost estimate on the full job as well. So we've currently been looking at alternatives to that, but the cost of a water main to extend to that point is still the same as the cost of a water main, which still has to be borne by how many properties we cross. So we can bring that forward, and I have no problem doing that. We have a lot of the work done already, and Council can certainly take a look at those numbers and design and see how we move forward.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that, Stuart. Councillor Minaj.
Just for clarification, I'm not so overly concerned about the shower and the dishwasher. I am concerned about drinking water, and I believe we have options. We can provide options, and we've suggested options. They can fill up at a station somewhere in the community to get themselves some drinking water?
Okay, so there's a number of items there for your information. I'll leave them there. And we have 3 department head reports, and if there's any questions on them, let's... Sorry, 5. There's another page over here. So, there they are. And if you have any questions on particulars or any department head would like to speak to any of them? Okay. Vice Deputy Huber.
Question about the $2,500 that goes to the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. Just what value do we get from that membership? Just a quick comment.
That's a group of mayors or a group of communities, about 130 now, that surround the Great Lakes that advocate and for water quality, Great Lakes rehabilitation. There's a number of, I know they've supported an initiative in a number of areas. Pine River, I think it's called the Pine River Watershed Initiative. But they lobby actively with both the provincial governments and the federal governments through the United States and Canada. And they're actually, if you're interested, their annual general meeting will be this year, June, in Sarnia. And if you're interested in the committee, it's one that you could attend. Okay, and I think maybe you want to comment on frozen water, Stuart? Frozen water update?
Yeah, so I did provide council some information here that I won't go over again. Just a quick update on numbers since the 16th. We've now received more than, I think we're up to 106 calls right now since the 16th. Good news is right now we only have 9 requests still open. So we're working on phone calls from Saturday, Sunday at this point. And if you want, there is a news item on today's or yesterday, regardless on the internet, that does have a map on there, an interactive map where you can see where all the frozen water services are.
Thanks, Stuart. I just, on behalf of council, I really want to thank you and your works crew for this. Has been a very trying issue for you, I know this, and has stressed you guys unnecessarily, but thank you for all the work you do for our community, and pass that on to the guys, because I know this has been very trying on you. Councillor Minaj.
I would echo that, that our workers have been doing a good job. To be fully transparent with the community, I would like to be sure that we offer our help wherever and whenever it's needed, and I'm sure we will. There is a concern that the frost level is at 7 feet, and without a thaw, which we may have been getting this week, it would continue to penetrate and go down. So certainly we're not over the worst part about it, and I think that Stuart can tell us that the thaw cycle is equally as bad as the freeze cycle. So we're not out of it, and many communities are wrestling with it. It's getting worse. The situation's getting worse, and it's going to take more resources, and it's going to take more patience and understanding. And I hope we offer out to the community, those people who are affected. I happen to know 2 people who went away for a month, came back, and their basement was flooded, and now they're staying at the Super 8 motel until there's mold and everything else that can be dealt with. And they live in a 4-year-old, less than 4-year-old home on Fenton Acton Drive. So these things are happening to our community residents all around us, and I hope we reach out to them, and if necessary, we help them understand where the problem was, and not just say, well, it's your problem, it's our problem, or whatever. But we work cooperatively with all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our agenda then. So, Councillor Grace.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment on the last part of that report. I really applaud Stuart and your staff for working on developing a rebate program and considering that option. Thank you.
Okay. Given the lateness of the hour, I think we'll dispense with the good of council tonight, so we'll take a motion to adjourn. Don and Councillor Myatt, Mike Myatt, all in favor? Are carried. So if you want to take let's try 5 minutes, and we'll move on to council.